I was dumpster diving.
Yeah.
That's on Saturday. They don't have out there. Getting rushed.
I told him what, that 12 or Wednesday, you need to get ready. Well, that's why we're in the home. So the top he said, no, this is not quite so cheery looking.
No.
Yeah, it's like music to my ear.
I wish.
Did you get my picture? Okay.
I think we're waiting until the recording. We'll call apartment, it's amazing, whatever we call that. Yeah.
No.
Then I've got nothing to report.
The trees look like they were packing.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah. Like,
No,
yes,
okay.
that was.
The land survey, and they're stakes and everything.
Yes, there are stakes.
Yeah, and we have I'll do them all.
Okay, good. And I'll defer to you, and you can, because that's all there is for a farm.
I sent that to Pat and Cody. I did not put you on the email, but I will send it to you.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
I made a key lime pie before I came here.
Where'd you get your key limes?
The grocery store?
Good place for it.
You make your left, huh?
My first one.
Your laptop charger in here?
I don't have
It's,
it. No, they freeze there. You have to take them in and out of your house.
Now they do. Yeah, my dad put it on a furniture dolly, big clay pot furniture dolly. He bought these grafted trees that half of it is key limes and half of it is lemons.
Yeah, no.
And then it died. It was an expensive loss for him. And so I bought him a furniture dolly for his big pot. He treats that thing like his baby. He wheels it inside every time it gets, not only inside, he wheels it inside to his master bedroom. Yeah, that's just strange.
He misses you.
That might be a little bit.
Okay, relax.
Okay, we're live.
Yes. Hello, Mr. President.
Good evening. All right, I am calling this regular meeting of Wood Creek City Council to order. It's 6:34, February 8th, 2023. Ask for everyone to rise for a moment of silence before the pledges. God bless all our volunteers. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
I like your sweater, Linnea.
City Secretary, call roll, please.
Mayor Joe Fresca,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Brent Pulley,
Here.
Councilmember Bob Members,
Here.
Councilmember Linnea Bailey,
Here.
Councilmember Deborah Hines,
Here.
Councilmember Chris Grove.
Here.
Thank you.
We do have a forum. May
Yes, sir.
proceed. With public comments.
No, sir.
We'll move to consent calendar.
Mayor, I'd like to pull the minutes for discussion into the regular agenda.
That's fine. Need a second?
I'll second.
All right, that's fair to say. I know that, there were some notes that you found.
Yes, sir. Are we going to address them now or later under?
No, let's go ahead and knock it out and then we can.
Okay.
We can do it.
Thank you. Sorry, I wasn't sure with the new ordering how. All right. So most of them were just, little typos. So on page 5.
So this is page 5
In
of
your
the
packet.
packet.
In your packet, page 5, geo bond is GO, not geo like geographical. It stands for general obligation bond, is actually an abbreviation.
Oh, got it, thank you.
Page 14, there's a typo at the very bottom. It should say chapter 157, the 7 is missing. References a non-existent chapter 15.
I'm looking. Oh, I see it, thank you,
Very, very bottom.
thank you, found it.
Page 17. You also have these in your email.
Yes, ma'am.
Page 17, the woman's name is Susie Hald with a D.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Right there.
And it's, Susie is what she goes by. So that's what she signed.
We'll get it off of her application. However she filled out her application, we'll use that.
Okay. The next typo is that on page 24, the company's name is Hill Country Land Improvement. I don't know if there's a Hill Country Land or not. I think that's a title company maybe, but
It's easy enough to make that change.
yeah. And then the only substantive correction I have is on page 22.
Back up.
Yeah,
You said Hill Country Land Improvement.
yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Page 22. The Parkview update is missing all of the commentary about the donated tree work and rock work.
Yeah,
I can give you something if you don't want to rewatch the meeting, but just,
that would be fine. I actually didn't do those minutes, so that
Okay.
would help. Thank you.
so yeah, I will give you a little brief summary of what I said.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I think that's easier than having to go through the video.
So Parview.
I have my notes, so this is gonna copy my notes.
Any others?
No, sir, that's it.
Okay, so I think that you just need to do is, make a motion to, approve the minutes as amended. I do have them signed, I will not sign these, they're prepared for my signature, so we get a reprint, a clean reprint with the typos corrected.
Yes, sir.
I move that we approve the amended minutes as corrected in this meeting.
I second.
We have a motion and a second, any further discussion? Call the roll to approve the minutes.
All right. Mayor Pro Tem Brett Foley,
Aye.
Councilmember Bob Hambrick,
Aye.
Councilmember Linnea Bailey,
Aye.
Councilmember Deborah Hines,
Aye.
Councilmember Chris Trimmer.
Aye.
Great, thank y'all. We'll move to the regular reports and officers and council liaisons, beginning with planning and zoning.
Mayor, if I may. On January 4th, P and Z meeting, they made a motion to recommend the council to request funding for a public hearing to review the SDR documents, and it was passed unanimously. Today's meeting on February 8th, the motion was, actually, do you have the minutes in front of you?
They're in my office. I can
Okay.
review them.
I'm going to paraphrase.
Okay.
And I do apologize if it's not exact, but this is what I wrote down. Motion to schedule to hold a public hearing for P and Z at the next regular meeting to include minimum lot sizes and short-term rentals.
I believe that's correct. Yeah.
And that would be March 1st.
Yeah. Yes.
That's the report.
That would be March 1st, yes.
All right. ORC, Councilmember Hines?
Yeah, sorry. Trying to understand what that, okay. So there's a typo in the agenda here. It says, there's like a 22 in front of things. I don't know what that is, but just want to point that out.
Got it, thank you.
So they report that the ORC minutes this week, actually, I was, zoomed in, or whatever the meeting's called at home.
Microsoft Teams.
Thank you, sir. They moved into the final draft of their important Wood Creek ordinances form. They created the last of the changes there. It's been submitted to them for posting on their next agenda and approval if they'd like to move forward or further edits. They postponed the election of the chair and vice chair until March. Their Chapter 34 emergency management update is essentially tabled indefinitely until further notice, as the mayor and city manager will be coordinating with larger regulatory bodies like the county. And so that committee would like to get that information from y'all before they work on that update any further. So it's just kind of this item tabled pending that information. The city manager clarified that the ordinance review committee's work is to review items sent to them specifically by council. That's in the ordinance. They cannot actually technically take up things sent to them by any other advisory body. So we need to keep that in mind, liaisons, when we are working with them, our groups, that they don't send things to ORC. They actually, if they wanted to get to ORC, needed to the council. ORC is specifically a body serving council only. The city manager rule recommended that council be more specific in what they would like the ordinance review committee to be spending their time on. They're sort of lacking direction and found the overall review of the code a little bit overwhelming. They've pivoted back and forth on what their plan is. So I think right now they're sort of, they would like more clear direction from us. So there is an item further down on the agenda that might kind of start to help move them in that direction if we vote on it. That's it.
Thank you. Parks and Recreation, Councilmember Hendrick.
We met about 2 weeks ago, and we talked about the order in which to do things. The first thing being to do a survey of Creekside Park. And then after that, we can make some decisions about how we're going to organize things and where to place things and what the priority should be. And that's as far as we've gotten so far.
And Mr. Mayor, we did get that survey back yesterday, and I emailed that to the chairman and the vice chair of the Parks and Rec Board, and so they will begin working on that. But we have received the survey. It had the lines plus every tree on the lot, cedar, oak, and elm.
Okay.
All of those trees are on the survey, so.
Yeah, I think I just want to reiterate what we talked about before, and I don't know if we've heard anything from the golf course about being able to.
Not yet.
Okay.
We're working on that.
Okay. So, you know, part of the hope is that we can take part of that Hog Creek property and incorporate it, since it's like useless other for nothing else, just a fence. All right, Platinum Rose Family.
I think you've seen the timetable for our Chip Seal Road project, and it will go out. It'll go to CIVCAS on the 10th, and then we'll be mailing letters out on the 15th. The whole bid process will still take some time. Finally, we'll get to paving on April 15th. However, that's perfect weather for doing this. I've been compiling a list of local, like within 50 miles, mid-size paving and chip seal contractors that we can send out letters to. And I've compiled about 15 so far. So we get a good complement of bidders.
Councilmember Bailey, did you say 15 or 50 miles?
15.
50 miles,
50 miles out.
so that they will service the area.
Oh, I see.
Got it, thank you.
15 companies, 50 miles.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, I got the schedule plugged based into my calendar. So pretty exciting. But I think we all probably get asked about that.
Yeah.
So, good information to have. Thank you, Councilman Bailey. Tree board.
Yes, our next meeting is Monday, February 13th. Nothing really to report since the last time we met. We do have an application for Oak Wilk assistance in your packet, and I'll discuss that in more detail when it comes up. Oh, the other thing is we will be talking about, what the tree board's role should be going forward, in dealing with this ongoing, I guess catastrophe is one way to put it, but we kind of see what our role will be. I think Council Person Hines has already mentioned that maybe when you update the tree survey, that's something that we'll be looking at and seeing what our role will be in that regard going forward.
Chair Ramos actually requested and received a copy of the survey, so they've already got that kind of in process. So that was good. Already on that. We get the city manager report.
Yes, it's been a fun week. A little busy, but I just want to thank everybody for volunteering, helping their neighbor, going out and looking at one another. Also, all of those that showed up on Saturday to drop off their limbs and brush down across from One Parview. We had a very good reception. A lot of people came by. We were busy from 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock when we shut down. Don't know how many cars came, but it was steady. I don't think we stopped once. There's still a little brush down there. We are working to get that into the dumpsters and cleaning up that area as well. We're not going to have a dump trash off this weekend. We're looking for next weekend just because of the late timing of it, and some things are transpiring. One of those things is the trash pickup on the side of the road that has been delayed for a couple of days. I just learned about that a couple minutes ago. It will probably start on Tuesday, so it's not delayed that much, but it has been delayed a couple days. But they will start on Tuesday. We're still doing the trash pickup or the brush pickup. This is not the only brush pickup that we'll have. We'll have another one in a couple of weeks. This process is not going to go away very soon. I'm sure we'll be dealing with the trees and the limbs being down and damage and everything like that for probably a couple months. So we will not stop or, just do this one time. It's going to be a number of months that we'll be working on this. So just everybody have patience and we will get through it. Yes.
Are we concerned that they're going to interrupt trash service at all? Are they confident they're going to be able to do trash service and brush pickup on Tuesday?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they did come through. It's two different crews. Their trash crew is totally different from their brush crew. They did come through Tuesday.
Yes.
And picked up trash. And there was a lot of limbs and debris on the road, so that's not an issue. One thing I will say is that they are only picking up brush. If there is furniture or whatever, tables, they are not picking that up. So please take that back inside. It is only brush. Make sure the brush is away from telephone poles, mailboxes, fire hydrants, and not under trees
Boxes.
or electrical.
And
boxes.
obviously we'll get an update on that out
Yes, as soon as I get clarification,
to
we
our
will
600.
Yes. We will send out an email and a text. If you would like to get emails from the city about events or news flashes about pickup, they can get on the website, give us their email address in a database that we don't really look at. We just push a button and it sends it out. So we've been doing updates almost on a daily basis with what's happening in the city.
And I'd like to applaud staff on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And so we're going to keep doing that. Hopefully it will get further and further away from giving updates and news flashes as we go through the process because there'll be less and less to do. But we will continue to update our website and send out the emails and text messages when we do have important information that we need to get out to the community.
And speaking of applause, would you also just share the comment from our TDM representative?
That is yes, our TDM representative visited on Tuesday, I believe, or Monday. And she was very impressed with the process that we have put in place here. She said that we were one of the better cities that has gone through this process with the infrastructure that we put up with the collecting of the brush and getting it out towards the road and having Waste Connections come in and pick it up. So she was very impressed with what we had done. She said most cities really haven't done anything yet. One thing that I did hear from Waste Connections is that they heard how we were using them to do the brush pickup. And they were very impressed what we were doing over here. And so Wimberley has contacted our brush.
Not for Thursday.
Not for Thursday,
No,
no. We're first, but Wimberley has contacted them to inquire about what they could do because they saw what we were doing. So they're kind of following our lead.
I was gonna say, I've heard good things from the neighbors as well, and particularly the banner on the website has been really helpful for people, so thank you guys for doing that. It's good to hear good things from folks. One question I have, do people need to sign up this time for the brush pickup, or is it they just pick up when you see them?
No, they're going to go down every street in the city and pick up. So you do not need to call City Hall or send us anything. And like I said, once they do come and pick up the trash, I'm sure, or not trash, the brush, I'm sure that as soon as they pick it up, people will bring out additional brush. When we see that becoming the sidewalk, yeah, we'll get Waste Connections to come out here and do another brush pickup as we see the volume increase on the side of the roads. And so it's not a one-time deal that they're coming through the city. We'll probably do it at least 2 times, maybe 3 times.
And one more thing, would you just let everybody, or just remind everybody about the companies doing the right-of-way cleanup?
Sure, we hired 4 companies to clean up the right-of-way, trim down the trees, pick them up, put them on the side of the road, make sure that the right-of-ways are safe from trees that have fallen, or there's branches that need to be cut off clean from the break. They're doing that. The one company is, Suzanne, can you help me out? Do you remember wrong?
The Techstar in section orange is almost done. Bush Barber has the green section. They're already working, and
Healthy Oak.
Healthy Oak Trees has the blue area. They're also already working. And the pink area is Simple Leaf Tree Care.
Right. What we did is we split the city into 4 quadrants, and each tree trimming company has a certain quadrant or certain road that they're going to go down to. So that's how we split it up between the 4.
And again, we wanted to get local companies.
Correct.
Yes.
That could probably use the word, but they were reputable and
Right.
licensed, insured.
Yes.
And it just made it, let us get it done a little faster.
We looked how we invited these companies, and we looked at the
We went through the
Permits.
tree permit.
we went through the tree permit and looked at all of the vendors that have done business here in the city recently. We sent them a personalized invitation to come to a meeting to talk about it. And so we had a pretty good response for that. And so that's how we got the vendors that we chose.
Yeah, and I'll say, that, I mean, it was Thursday, we were still cleaning up, and you were already having meetings, trying to figure that out, so I think staff for that was amazing.
I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. City Secretary.
I do, if you don't mind, just a moment. In reference to the tree right-of-way vendors that we've hired, we have given them these sheets to hand out as they are performing work throughout the city. We've already had several reports that residents ask them can you do this real quick? Or can you, do that? And it does take time away from our, what we're paying them for, because we are paying them per day. So these sheets were generated and the tree contractors are handing them out to whoever approaches them and asks them. So please don't leave without getting these today, because I want you guys, since you are also walking around and you're highly visible, if you don't mind handing these out as well, because we have started that new assistance website. And,
Yeah, that,
May I go back? Just, we do have a new, email address. It's assistance@woodcreektx.gov for any individual or couple in the city that is having difficulty cleaning their lot. If you will email, information to us, name, address, and contact information, and, just tell us that you need help cleaning up, your yard. We will work on getting some volunteers to come out and help you. There's a lot of elderly individuals, that live in the city, or those that have physical constraints that can't physically clean up. And so this is one way that we're trying to help them. Send us an email at assistance@woodcreektx.gov, and we'll try to get volunteers to come help you in your yard.
That's
and I
great.
do know that Councilmember Hines has been sort of combing social media and putting together another list. In fact, you're
We've merged. I'm organizing the program.
good, correct, cool.
Are there limitations to, let's say someone has a tree it's topped, but it hasn't fallen off yet?
Yes, we don't want anybody to do anything dangerous.
Okay.
This is mainly general cleanup.
Yeah, that's not.
We
voluntary.
want taking a chainsaw and cutting a tree on the ground, and, because a lot of people don't have chainsaws. A lot of people can't physically carry that wood to the front of their lot. So, the more dangerous, getting way up in the tree and cutting something up, this is not what the volunteer group would do.
And it also puts the city in liability.
right.
Right. We're just documenting that kind of thing, and that's gonna be a second list of people who may potentially need professional assistance.
Okay.
But the goal, and the houses I've already visited, is that if we reduce the amount of work that they need, they might actually be able to afford to pay a professional to come. So that's what I have been sort of saying, we'll reduce the work, get a bid. If you still need assistance, come back to us.
Anything else? Okay, great.
No, sure.
Moving on to the, special committees, Councilmember Hines, the ARPA review.
Actually, I'm gonna go ahead and take that one.
Thank you.
Due to the committee's ad hoc nature, the committee is dissolved once their task has been completed. Due to the wonderful knowledge that our city manager has and brought to our attention regarding this whole process about seeking RFPs and RFQs, we found out that it's not required at this time for the ARPA grant due in part to a monetary threshold that our board did not meet. For that reason, this committee is now completed. This saves the city money by not needing to go through all this process. So consider this ad hoc committee closed.
Thank you. Do you want to move on to the next one?
Those things are flipped.
Okay.
I keep getting the ARPA, and I've never once been a part of that.
I was
Thank y'all.
wondering that it was, I just followed the agenda.
I love that I'm assigned everything.
Just bear with us on this agenda.
Yeah, no, you're fine.
There are a couple mistakes in here. It was, once again, a fun week.
I'm impressed. You got it all. You did great. So the update on 154 plus is that the second draft of 154 is done and has been shared. The committee postponed last week naturally because there was a disaster. Member Duncan actually reached out today and inquired about postponing again. She felt that it was too much of a burden on staff and council given everything we have going on. And since none of this is immediately pressing, it's been going on for a long time. She wanted to kind of give everybody a breath. So she asked if we were okay with that. Councilmember Grummer and I both said that's great. We have a new member wishing to join. His name is James Miller. He's on the Ordinance Review Committee. So it was a natural fit. Ms. Tharp has not been able to meet, and so it was kind of a trade-off between the two. With that being said, the environmental protection chapter is gonna be going out tonight as well, so they'll get a first draft of that. And I'm hoping to get the subdivision's first draft sent out this week as well. We'll kind of see, but they have a lot to do for next Thursday already, so. Moving along, I think we're still hit our end of February deadline for that work of those chapters to be moving to other people.
Thank you very much. So move on to new business. And again, yeah, I apologize for the agenda. It was an interesting week and getting it together, and it was a lot later than I know you all know that I like it to be. So apologize for anything that I said to get adjusted here, but I'm going to start with number 4, which is the presentation of the Spirit of Wood Creek Award. And Councilmember Pulley, but we heard from we want to award this to the entire Parks and Recreation Board. But the chair, who is also the artist that makes the award happen, didn't do it. Because there were other things going on. So as far as discussion goes, do we want to go ahead and just say, yeah, okay, we'll just go ahead and vote it in, or do we want to, we wanted them here so that we could honor them. So do we want to honor in absentia, or do we want to wait?
I personally would rather wait to have them here. It just was a scheduling mix-up, primarily because of last week, I think. So I hate it, but I'd like to have them here, and we'll probably have another meeting. I would assume another special meeting pretty soon, I would guess, but that would be my preference. But I'm also going to listen to what the council's wishes are on that.
I move that we postpone, or was the proper table, I guess, until the next meeting.
This first one was correct.
Postpone. I move that we postpone the award of the Spirit of Wood Creek to the Parks Board until our next meeting, special or regular.
And then in the meantime, we'll accept Councilmember Grummer's, I'm sorry, you second.
I'll second.
So Councilmember Grummer's motion to say the whole city gets the Spirit of Wood Creek.
Yeah.
Which they richly deserve. Okay, so no discussion, we'll vote on the motion. To postpone.
Got it. Councilmember Bob Hambrick,
Aye.
Councilmember Linnea Bailey,
Aye.
Councilmember Deborah Hines,
Aye.
Councilmember Chris Grummer,
All right.
Mayor Pro Tem Brent Pulley.
Fine.
And you got that was either regular or special, right?
Yes, ma'am. Move to postpone the award of the Spirit of Wood Creek to Parks and Rec. Either at a meeting, at the next meeting, whether special or regular.
The next item is one we discussed before about the establishment of a schedule for submission of certain applications to the city. City Attorney Gordon wrote up a resolution, so it's on the agenda now. If you'd like to speak to it, and then we'll just.
Sure, as a quick summary of what we discussed in December, due to legislative changes, which in their wisdom at the Capitol were created as one size fits all. Cities, whether the size of Austin or the size of Wood Creek, now operate under a shot clock when an application is submitted for review. The shot clock is short, even if you have in-house engineers, experts, and consultants. It's incredibly short when you've got to farm that out to third-party consultants. A mechanism that has been adopted in smaller cities such as ourselves for addressing that is creating by resolution a calendar in which certain weeks are identified as weeks in which the city will accept such applications, such that a dialogue can be started in advance with our engineers, consultants, and otherwise saying, be ready on this Monday because we're going to start accepting applications this week. Beginning on page 25 is a resolution, to be 26, the resolution that I prepared. You can really skip ahead to page 28 because the feedback and the guidance, which I think is important from both city staff and the council, is what are the weeks that you actually want to be the acceptance weeks. And so I threw this out here just as a placeholder, identifying 1 week every 2 months, trying to drop that in the middle of the month so it didn't mash up with the council meeting. But again, no matter what week I select, there's always gonna be some conflict. For example, the March week might be spring break. The November week may end up running up on Thanksgiving. So I would invite the council to take a look at this, provide us any feedback you'd like. And you can vote to either edit it today and accept it or accept it as it is.
May I ask a question? Of course. Mayor Cumming. So you chose 6 windows. Is there a specific reason why 6 versus 4?
Not at all.
So there wasn't.
You can be 12 windows. It could be, I think the idea was if it's 12 windows, well, as a practical matter, that's no windows at all.
Yeah.
It's just every,
It's the same as it is.
It's a 30-day, yeah.
Mhm.
I think the idea here is to try to find the right balance between somebody that wants to do something with their property and the practical reality of the time it takes for us to get something out to our engineer, get feedback, et cetera. So you guys can adjust that as you see fit.
I would like to then move my question to city staff. Do you feel that if 5 large projects happened in 1 week, that gives you enough time before the next round might come around?
If 5?
I'm just choosing 5 complicated projects all show up at once.
No.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying. So, because let's just say we're the type of city that somehow, someday, 5 keep showing up every 2 months.
We would need to come back and revise this.
Yes.
Would we wish to now, the other argument would be, a lot of the projects that are being presented are probably smaller and can be dealt with in such a way that it doesn't
Correct.
conflict with what you do otherwise.
Staff feels that the schedule that Mr. Gordon came up with would be manageable for the city and for the staff and for our engineer.
So this was a discussion that.
Yeah, I mean, I try to get a feel, right? I mean, I can't think, and it scares me to think of 5 big projects coming in at once. But as a practical matter, we tend to get them kind of one at a time, right? And honestly, when you say that's a good suggestion, there might be a tweak that could say the first 3 projects submitted in every week window. And then if you're the 4th project, you roll over to number 1 on the next window. I don't want to try to, micromanage every possible scenario, but you're totally right. That could happen. I think it's the big projects, the subdivisions, the development agreement type stuff that we wanted to ensure that 60 days is enough time. And the feedback that I got from talking to city secretary and city manager was that 60 days is a pretty good window. Basically, it's enough time to get your response and take a breath and be ready for the next go around 30 days later.
If I may, one question I had was on the really small projects, and I wasn't thinking big, I was thinking of the regular old homeowner who submits an application and it's not as complete as it should be. Would they really be penalized by not? Okay, tell me how it would be different. In other words, would they be given some time slack because they messed up on getting their plat right or something like that, and they wouldn't be required to wait the full.
Well, so
next time around.
You actually, like, I think the building permit's a good example. Yeah. Right, somebody wants to build a deck in their backyard. I don't think there's anything that would prohibit the city administration from accepting and approving a project like that. The shock at any time.
Okay, good.
The shot clock, if we needed to rely upon that, would not start until the next window in which that application was submitted.
Because we can always finish it beforehand. But what this allows us to do is to get it in, work with that developer before maybe that time starts.
Yes.
But on the smaller stuff, it'll probably be business as usual.
Okay, That's not the way it read to me when I read it. Like, wait a minute.
Yeah, and yeah, I don't want to create a scenario where the city is hamstrung from taking action appropriately.
Yeah.
And again, the shot clock is new, right? We're all kind of fumbling our way through this. And I think this creates the greatest degree of flexibility for the city staff.
Councilmember House?
Sorry, I know what to start, yeah, so on the line where it says will not be considered as timely submitted into the next immediate following period, does this mean the submission date will be held until the next period? Meaning somebody turns in a full application in between. They can, will staff be reviewing in between the periods? That's the goal, right? So they don't just sit there and on the piece of paper, tell the date, and then they open up I got all these on March through whatever, and then March 15th this year, and now I open my folder, and now we start, right? So they're gonna start as they start coming in. It's just that completed application letter won't go out unless it's between those weeks.
That's pretty much how I interpret it.
Okay.
Correct. There's nothing here that would prohibit staff from doing their normal day-to-day operations and reviewing applications.
It just doesn't start the shot clock.
It doesn't start the shot clock. And just looking at any particular, like, if somebody, what's today? Today's February 8th. If somebody submitted something tomorrow, right, they could, from February 9th up to March 15th, undertake a review, provide it to the engineer, get some instant feedback. But the 30-day clock on that project would not start until March 15th.
Right, so if staff were to determine a application was administratively complete in between the two lines, they could not issue that letter.
I think the 30-day letter?
Yeah.
They wouldn't need to, because they would just approve the permit.
Okay.
Yeah. Staff can approve an administratively complete permit at any time. Staff is not hamstrung by the 30-day shot clock to approve an administratively incomplete application until it's submitted in one of these windows.
Okay. And then there's no indication, so I'm pointing out some of the vagueness of this, and it might be intentional, but the concerns you're hearing to me are real, meaning people are gonna see this resolution potentially, or even maybe, future council members and not quite understand what the intentions were here. Because right now, it doesn't list what chapters it applies to specifically. It's not saying this is applicable to subdivision, site development, and what else starts a shot clock? Rezoning application. So I would like to make the motion that additional clarity is added as to what permits this is applying to and what it does not impact.
More than the opening paragraph?
I would like it stated in the part that actually becomes what people read. Everyone skips that stuff.
Sure.
Sorry, just being real. So section 4 would list the applicability, please. I don't have a second, so
So you want to restate that motion as shorter?
the motion is to add a section 4 to state what types of permits this is applicable to specifically.
So just as a reminder, this exact question is before the Attorney General's office right now on a request for an OAG opinion. And so we can definitely amend it should the council so desire. What I would ask for, if that's the preference, is approval in advance to follow whatever the AG comes out with as a recommendation. As a reminder, that's not binding, but it's usually pretty reliable. So there was a request to the AG's office for this very issue.
Yeah, I'm understanding. I was just processing the concept of technically we're required to follow whatever the state law is anyway. We just make a new resolution.
Yeah.
So we would just update this resolution.
That's right.
So, yeah, okay. So
I'll second your.
thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
If we'd like to, Mary, have a discussion or vote on that, and then I have another thing to recommend.
Okay, so the motion is to further clarify the description, the therefore, to make it a little more specific as to the types of permits besides where it says planning, zoning, planning, subdivision, demolition, and new construction.
Right, so, and put it down here in the sections, because that's the part people are gonna scroll to and read and see how does this impact them. That's where it tells them what to do, right? Like, so it doesn't impact new construction permits, but it would impact the site development permit for new construction. So I'm asking for that actual clarity of the real permits that this actually impacts, not that vague description of categories.
Well, that's the motion.
What were you reading from? I'm so sorry.
The motion is
Yeah, okay.
to add more specific, permitting, areas under the sections, of the resolution, to make it clearer for, people reading the resolution.
The way I understand it is we're creating a new section 4.
Yeah, it wouldn't be section 4, it'd end up being a section 3 with section
Okay.
3 turning into section 4, but
Okay.
yeah, that
All
would
right,
be
so we're just basically moving from that first paragraph in the whereases. We're just restating that down in the, on page
No, it's
19.
not a restatement, it's a clarification. At the top of the ordinance, or sorry, resolution is a broad thing of where all this could impact. What I am asking Mr. Gordon to do is under the sections, add a fourth section that identifies which specific components under those broad categories are being impacted here. So as I listed, that's specifically the site development plan, specifically the subdivision plan, specifically rezoning plan. That's all I can think of right off the top
Yeah,
of my
and I
head.
think that makes sense. Would you be okay with the language of the now therefore? Or do you want, I'll give you more details. I think that
Where it deviates slightly, and where I think the confusion coming from Councilmember Hambrick is this concept of new construction.
sure.
Specifically, that to me is the only area where you're potentially going to cause problems with actual residents, not developers. Because remember, this is specifically geared at that, like, I'm building a whole new thing, or I'm developing new land, not I'm wanting to do, basic construction at my house. Yeah, so that's where that, like, issue is coming
And
from.
just so I have clarity, do you want that included in the shot clock or not?
I don't think regular permitting for basic structures should be in the shot clock. I think we're talking about things that take sending in, like, the plans are this thick.
So like the building the deck, for example, no shot clock or shot clock?
Yeah.
No shot clock. I know we send that to engineers, but they usually get back to us in about 2 weeks, right?
That does not go.
Deck's on the go, so there we go.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that I'm not putting my interpretation in for what you're expecting.
I'm sorry, can I? Okay, when a permit comes in, what we consider new construction to be is a new home. So,
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, a new home should be, this should be applicable.
okay, so the
Are we
terminology,
on the same page on that one?
yes.
Oh, yeah.
And then basically everything other than that? Yeah.
So I think if my
I'm sorry.
interpretation is,
I'm sorry. I just want to finish what I was going to say. So the permits that we get on a daily basis, the titles of those are residential structures or accessories. So those wouldn't be included, and the residents would understand that those residential applications that are currently on our website are non-applicable in this case.
Residential structures or accessories.
And, yeah,
And we're
I'm
carving
sorry.
that out. Yeah, that's easy.
I figured, I was like, oh, hold on.
No, that's helpful. Very much, thank you.
That's it.
All right. Any further discussion? We want to vote on it. We have a motion on the floor. Let's call roll, please.
Yes, sir. Councilmember Linnea Bailey.
Aye.
Councilmember Deborah Hines. Councilmember Chris Grummer.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Brent Foley.
Aye.
And Councilmember Bob Hendrick.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay.
Yes.
So then the next little thing I'm a little bit concerned about is the wording on section 1 that I asked a question about earlier will not be considered as timely submitted until the next immediate following period. I think, So we are consistently looking at our ordinances and trying to make them easier for our citizens to use, make them easier for the average person to use. And that statement to me is a little bit of a pretzel brain, kind of moment of like going, what does that mean? So I will issue a formal motion that I would like to have some discussion on this topic of how could we reword this to make it more accessible, meaning the intention is to say you can submit your materials during those windows only. They will be reviewed in the periods between them. If they are incomplete, you know what I mean? So
Yeah, so we can't tell people that they can't submit an application any day of the week.
okay, so that needs to be clear.
Yeah, and what we can tell people is that it's not considered to be timely submitted until these particular windows.
And what do you mean by timely submitted?
Timely submitted for purposes of starting the shot clock.
Is that, if I may, is that a very specific legal term?
Shot clock?
No, the timely submission.
Yeah, I took that straight from the legislation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a way to dumb it down?
Yeah, but my suggestion, and obviously I'll do whatever you think. The resolution is not the place to dumb it down, because the resolution is where people are gonna get this information. This information is gonna find its way into an application or a form or instructions on the city council's website or the city's website. Or probably there's gonna be some change that will come to the residential application, subdivision, zoning, et cetera, et cetera. And so, I would suggest that if we're gonna dumb it down, that would be the place to do it. And I don't know if people come in and get a copy of the resolution and read that, or if they just get a copy of the subdivision form or application form or zoning application form. So, I can dumb it down however you see fit.
Well, I would like to work towards being able to pass this evening
Sure.
with these few amendments. So if we could just kind of discuss it for a little bit longer. I hear what you're saying. It, in effect, where it actually becomes used is later on. But these resolutions are forward facing on our website and they are accessible.
Sure.
And so I just want to make sure that the process outlined here is clear enough so that when those applications go to be updated, everyone's on the same page about what is supposed to happen, you know? So is there a way to be more clear by saying applications can be submitted at any time during these windows is when administratively complete letters will be sent?
But that's not,
No.
No, because it can go anytime. So again, to me, this is, I get your intention, right? But the wording on here is so vague that it is not clear what's actually happening in these windows that cannot happen any other time. Because if you can get
what
an
cannot
administrative,
happen, I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt you.
if you can get an administratively complete letter on May 12th, that starts the shot clock.
But the shot clock only applies when something is not administratively complete, right? Administrative
No.
complete means we've got everything. It's a ministerial. You get the yes or no after that, unless it goes to council.
No, yeah, so our process, even in the revised right now, is that you are submitting your application and staff has about 15 days or so to review what you've got until you give you some sort of determination. Meaning like you've got everything here, so then it goes into review process. And then we have the shot clock started. But until you get that administratively complete letter saying, we've now received your stuff and you actually have a complete application
30
now,
days from that.
then that's when that starts.
Yeah,
That's
okay,
my
I see
concern.
the need for clarification there. Gotcha.
So do you want to suggest a clarification? Because I would
Yeah.
love to.
Yeah, I think what I'd like to probably suggest is let me tweak that language, right? I mean, on the fly, I'm probably not gonna be able to do it. And
I
then.
mean, I'd prefer we not.
Okay, so I'm just gonna make them, I would like to move that, interim city attorney Gordon adjust the language on section 1 to address city procedure regarding administratively complete applications and the shot clock.
I second.
Okay, so the motion on the floor is to ask the city attorney to work on amendments to section 1 to clarify the city procedures and basically when this shot clock begins. And bring that back to council and we'll have a vote.
So the terminology specifically is that administratively complete, that's what our code like
Right.
hinges on?
Right.
Yeah, I can make that happen.
All right, and seconded by Councilmember Grimmer.
Can I repeat that, ma'am?
Please.
Okay. You move that interim city attorney Gordon adjust the language in section 1 to address administratively complete applications and the shot clock.
To bring it into alignment with city procedure
And say law.
and state law, yeah.
Mine. All right, is any further discussion? Councilmember, Colby, you had a hand up earlier.
No, not on this motion, just on this agenda.
Okay, so let's vote on the motion and we'll come back to Councilmember Ford.
Yes, sir. Councilmember Deborah Hines,
Aye.
Councilmember Chris Grummer,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Brent Foley,
Aye.
Councilmember Bob Hambrick,
Aye.
Councilmember Linnea Bailey.
Thank you, that, motion passes unanimously. And if you have more,
Yeah, just a couple, one question, I want to direct this, I guess, to the city manager and the staff. How do you feel about this number of windows? Would you prefer to have less, more, or 6 about the number that you'd like to have?
I have no problem with the 6.
Okay.
I don't really think that going from 6 to 4 or 4 to 6 really matters that much. It's more of setting or getting that time for that shot clock. And so I think that's the problem where we had before. So just so we have the windows, and I don't mind 6 at all. I want the people to have opportunity to submit and, get the process going. And so I like 6 because it's not that long of a wait.
Got it.
So unless we see it administratively cumbersome, that we do need to reduce it, we can always come back, but as it's currently written, I think we're fine.
Great.
I'd like to go back to the earlier point, and then I already forgot it, so I'm gonna have to ask you to find it and remind me, about the adjustment.
More words.
Yeah, I know. So it was when we first started, when I first had a discussion, we go, oh, we can make this little point, and then it just lost my brain. It just went.
Talking about on the permit applications and such?
There was a caveat in here.
You said first 3 accepted, 4th not. That was the adjustment he suggested.
What she said, make a section 4.
Before all that.
So these two, Mayor Pro Tem Pulley and Councilmember Grummer, essentially asked the same questions. Does staff like 6? Would 4 be better? Is there a difference? Then you went into the discussion of because he brought up what if there's 5 huge things?
That.
And you said maybe we could tweak it.
I said, if you want to do, if the council so desires to basically say the first 3, and then you're talking about kind of classifying different applications, right? A new construction permit is probably not the same thing as a subdivision application. Different levels of work. But if you'd like to give me some guidance on.
I like that concept. One is that we set a number, and I will trust your conversation with staff. That they're the first 3 major projects, and then if a 4th major project comes along, it gets put into the next.
I think that's a good idea.
May I make a suggestion on that front? I think subdivision, we should only accept maybe 1 subdivision at a time. That is the one process that is massive. And so I would say 1 subdivision per each period, that's it. And right now, where we have
I mean, yeah, run with it until we run into a challenge.
but I'm saying we might feel like that's not needed, but that's the one process that stalls everybody else.
but not if it's not if you just want to subdivide your acre or your 6 acres into 3.
It's okay, subdivision with development.
Yeah.
subdivision with new construction. Only one subdivision with new construction per period.
Whatever you guys want to see.
I agree.
I mean, what about planning? I mean, is that not a complicated process?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely talking about complicating it, and I think this is the distinction between, you know, if we had a little bit more settled law in this area right now, I think I could provide you a little more insight. You know, where TML and the author of this are asking Attorney General Paxton for guidance on the scope, essentially. How many projects are covered by this? Is it the deck? Is it new construction? Is it just subdivision and zoning, which I think is what the author intended it to be, replatting subdivision and zoning.
Yeah, so replatting and subdivision are essentially the same thing.
Correct, we live in the same world.
So by saying subdivision with new construction, we are covering replatting,
Yeah,
platting,
yeah.
all of that.
Yeah.
It's all the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you guys set the policy, I'll put it in paper.
And so we're approving with what we've discussed, or we're coming back?
Coming back.
My understanding is we're coming back. Yeah.
I'd like to make the motion that we add only one subdivision over 3 acres with new construction per,
Application period?
One subdivision over 3 acres with new construction per window.
Application period.
I second.
Seconded by Councilmember Drummer.
Thank you.
That'll probably be like a new section, so.
oh, yeah, I love sections.
We're having a discussion.
Yes.
I need clarification on that. So you're saying one developer comes in with the subdivision application. Then the next one comes in, does it have to wait? Or you say
Over,
you're scheduling, then
The
the
shop
first
clock.
third?
Correct.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, again, I think what we're trying to gauge based on the lack of detail in this bill is, do we have to wait until this window to take some action? Do we have to? No. Are we afforded the opportunity to push this out 2 months to the next window? The second person in your scenario would be the first person for the following window. And depending on however you guys tweak it in the future, maybe 2, whatever. I mean, this is not something that we're etching into stone, right? I mean, we're gonna get some guidance from the AG's office. I think that we'll bring that back to you guys and you can adjust if necessary accordingly.
If I may, Mayor, I'd like to kind of explain where I'm going with some of these edits, or what I'm trying to do is, a person can submit application materials at any point in time into their file. Our staff will only issue administratively complete letters during these windows, which starts our shot clock and begins the mandatory review process within 30 days from either the city manager issues that you're good to go, or it goes to P&Z reviews it. It gives us that window of anticipation of what's coming down the line. Staff has all the application materials. They realize this application will receive this letter. That letter will be issued and saying, you're getting your issue at the start of this window, your shot clock's starting. During that window is the only time they can issue administratively complete applications for these specific things. They can issue them for anything else all the time. It's just they are holding application materials in between each window. They say, thank you. You can update, okay, you're still missing this, you're still missing this. And then as soon as that window hits, if they have an administratively complete application, they issue that letter that starts the shot clock.
Okay,
all right. So we have a motion on the floor.
Read it up.
We're voting on one subdivision over 3 acres with new
Yes.
construction per window.
Correct. Councilmember Chris Grummer,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Brent Foley,
All right.
Councilmember Bob Hammer,
All right.
Councilmember Linnea Bailey,
aye.
Councilmember Deborah Hines.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right,
I'll have that for y'all for the next meeting.
Thank you, sir.
thank you. Item number 6, discussion and take possible action on the resolution to possibly extend the declaration of winter disaster for the city of Wood Creek. As part of the discussion with the governor's declaration of an emergency, my understanding is this is not required.
That's correct. I think this is a good opportunity for you to discuss and maybe inform the citizens as to what a disaster declaration means. I'm not sure if you guys have gone through this before, maybe,
2 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. And so not much has changed. I think the important takeaway is that disaster declarations create a lot of options for the individual homeowner. From the city's perspective, not a whole lot changes. We can push out the paying of certain bills. We'll likely can apply for federal reimbursement for certain things. If the city decides to buy a wood chipper, for example, that's the kind of thing that feds can't pick up. The cost is 75% of that. It may be more depending on the amount of volunteer hours you guys put in. And so at the time the agenda came out, the governor had not yet declared. In fact, I don't even think Hays County had declared. Maybe they did the day before. Y'all were the first city in Hays County to declare. So bravo. There's no need to address this right now in light of the governor's order. But if there is anything that you want to communicate to them.
No, it helped us a lot because we were able to go out immediately and say, no, you can forget the tree permit. You get out there and do what you need to do, to protect yourself and your family and your neighbors, and just get it done. I was receiving calls from tree companies and residents and all sorts, and it's just like they just needed some clarification, and the declaration gave us the power to say, no, all that is waived. We'll get it done. It gave us the authority to do some contracts to get some work done that was desperately needed, that we don't have the crews to do. I mean, we're not the county, we're not even San Marcos. We can't just put people in trucks and hard hats and have them go out and do that. So it gave us the authority to be able to get some things done, and it was incredibly helpful. And we would not be where we are right now if we had not taken the advice to declare the disaster and get it done. So thank you very much for that. And it made a tremendous amount of difference. So going forward, under the governor's declaration, we now have simplified methods for getting both personal property, your personal needs taken care of through the iStat, which we've sent out QR codes and links to that, where every citizen who's had to deal with this can simply file an iStat survey, and that goes directly into the county set records. We have a PStat, which is the broader that is filed. We actually have a way now to scan a QR code and plug in your volunteer hours, because we were just trying to take it all in and build a spreadsheet and figure out what to do with it. Now there's a QR code, you just get on your phone, boom, and I worked this day for this many hours for the city of Wood Creek. And that all goes into the thing. The nice thing about the volunteer hours under the disaster declaration is that, that's going to be applying volunteer hours is applied to the matching. So where we would have to come up with dollars out of the budget just to match any grants that we receive, if you go in and click on that QR code, my understanding is that's applied to the 25% grant match, which is just magic. I mean, that's money in your pocket.
So if I could get a further clarification, if I'm working on my own land, it's not counted as volunteer time, but if I'm working on my neighbors, any neighbors, that could be counted as volunteer time.
Should be counted.
Okay.
Don't miss the opportunity to count any hours.
So what we need to do is get that out to
The time you spent across chipping at the Baptist church.
Mhm.
Yeah, that counts.
Oh, even though it's my own property.
It was,
But see, yeah, all the neighbors is what I'm.
but you went over to chipping at the Baptist church, correct?
Mine, but I didn't do anybody else's.
I'm sorry. I thought you were
Probably
working,
mine.
I thought you were working the chippers, but still,
Feel pretty professional.
where you went over and helped
Yeah.
your neighbor.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And all the time we're out shoving brush and chipping wood and everything else, every minute of that time counts. Owen's time counts.
when somebody calls up to the city and has questions, that time should also be applied, right? You can allocate administrative time spent addressing these issues towards that 25% as well.
And 25% of that time will become part of a matching grant. It's something.
Yeah, so if the feds issue disaster declaration funds for $1 million, usually they'll say, we'll provide you $750,000. You guys come up with $250,000. I'm using that round number.
Right.
Councilmember Rice.
So, I happened to be here on Tuesday when the Texas Department of Emergency Management representative was here, and I got to talk to her for a little bit. And something that I was wanting to convey to the public, we put the notice out a couple times on social media, but what she told me is 5 of the 6 regions of Texas have every county, if not nearly every county, experiencing disaster issues at this point in time. So the mobilization of state resources is going to be slow, if non-existent, because typically when they mobilize those resources, they'll pull like from here to go to here, but everybody needs them. The only region that wasn't touched was like down by Houston, essentially. So you've already seen people from Houston coming up here to help as volunteers, but that's the only region the state can mobilize, and they're not there yet. The other thing she told me is that ISAP application is for structural damage only. So when you fill out that application, fill it out for everything, your fence posts, your benches, your shed, your roof, your windows. Any structural damage you experience needs to be filled out in that ISAP, even if you think it's minimal. And why that's so important is because the state has a $52 million threshold to meet of structural damage only before we will receive any funds. And none of the tree damage counts. It's not structural. So the cleanup, the tree damage doesn't count. Your loss in property value doesn't count. The only time the volunteer hours and the cleanup counts is if FEMA steps in after that $52 million threshold is met and issues funds to us. Then we could get that grant. We could use our hours to match that grant. So with that being said, she also informed me that as of Tuesday, we were nowhere close to it because all of the damage is trees. So we look around and we're absolutely devastated, and everyone's wondering how we couldn't have met it. And that's because it's not like when you have a flood or a hurricane or a tornado, all the houses were wiped down. And those events, you need that $52 million threshold within days. We're at that point, we're almost a week out and we're just not even scratching the surface yet. So it's really important. Everybody files all that structural damage, even the minor stuff, because it adds up. And she was not exceptionally confident that we would meet that threshold at that point in time. So it's really important people use that app and not shove it to the side, not feel like it's too difficult.
It's not particularly difficult.
No, it's not. It's just another thing to do right now, but.
Yeah, but, and, I was on call this afternoon, and they are picking up, since last week. I mean, so the word's getting out, it's just not getting out fast enough. And that was kind of the gist of that conversation, is that, it's looking better, but we're not there yet. So, and then I think the Hays County is like $1.25 million or something, so we have to look at that too, so.
My only concern about removing our disaster declaration at this time is what happens to specifically our tree permitting. I'm a tree lover. I want that permit back in place as soon as possible, but I am concerned that's going to get in the way of existing cleanup efforts. So how is that going to be impacted?
We still have the power to do that.
Okay.
I don't think we have to have this in place. Now, if we come back and say, if the governor's declaration lapses and we still have stuff to do, we put it back in place.
Okay. Then I move that we declare our disaster declaration.
It expired on its own terms today.
Oh, today. Okay, great. Sorry, I thought that's what this agenda item was.
Well, the agenda item was to do an extension, and the agenda item went on before the county and the governor
Expired today.
jumped on board.
Does the city have any intention of like letting the citizens know that the tree permit situation is still on pause?
Mhm.
Yeah, we can get that out of the. Yeah.
But to be painting cuts, all fresh cuts need to start.
Right. We've been telling that to everybody, including the tree workers.
Right, okay.
I actually saw a A&M Forestry Service, interview recently that basically suggested to local authorities that this is going to presage a real oak wilt challenge in the future. Right, because we all know that it only takes one person to not do their cuts, you know, and the Forestry Service, I think, is a really great resource, as y'all try to get those messages out. We've got fantastic, pre-drafted, you know, notices that can help you understand what they can and what they can't do, when they can and when they can't do it. I think our oak wilt date is next week.
February 1st.
February 1st, okay, yeah.
No, they didn't, Carl Blocky, who's our local.
Oh, yeah.
Carl said that, you know, we're actually kind of lucky in the timing of it because it's like, it's kind of early in the season. And for the most part, the ones that can't be treated because they're in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
You know, we'll do a fairly good job of healing themselves, but what we're asking is that like, when you go up and you trim that shaggy piece off, you gotta paint that thing.
Correct.
You know, and that's what we're asking.
And the other recommendation is to wait to make cosmetic cuts, if you
Yeah.
can. That was the other thing they sent out.
So one of the things I was thinking of is if we're shredding oaks now, because some of these oak trees are part of our damage. Are we causing more oak wilt because of the shredding process that we're doing?
No, the heat of mulch sitting, it gets like well over like, one of it like boiling point, but whatever, it gets really hot. Also, when it passes through the machinery, it gets really hot. And so that's something that Carl Blocky was actually here talking about a few months ago, that the spread of oak wilt on tools is most commonly spread through the ones that are not motorized, like they don't heat up, they're not machines. It's all the other stuff, hand saws, trimmers, that kind of stuff that's really spreads oak wilt contamination, because the little beetles they can't live at high heat or at that high friction, it just melts them, so.
Yeah, he was saying something like the internal temperature of a mulch pile is like 150 to 180 degrees.
Yeah, it was Jacob, yeah.
Yeah, that's warm.
They sweat, or like,
They'll burn.
They will get burnt.
You can see it steaming.
Those ones can't see
we had that happen actually
Believe
last
it.
All
summer.
right, any other discussion on this when we move on? Mhm.
You did, Attorney Gordon, you did mention, getting tree information out to the residents. We have a button on the website called tree information.
Great.
And under that, we have, resident care, new construction, and then oak wilt information. There's a lot of like pre-drafted documents that we got from the ISA website and other websites that we put on that.
But it's what you're talking about, new stuff
Yeah, I mean, I think
specifically to the storm?
yeah, specifically, right? I mean, this is like Councilmember Hines mentioned, the timing of this was like right at a fulcrum point on when to treat, when not to treat. And I just think that, you know, there are a lot of people out there with that handsaw doing their thing, you know, and communicate, you guys don't need me to micromanage communication, but A&M Forestry Service in conjunction with the state service has got some really good materials.
Item number 7 is to discuss and take appropriate action on naming the remaining member to the ordinance review committee.
Mayor, may I?
Yes, please.
I move that council approves recommendations of members to the ordinance review committee.
Second.
And did you have someone in mind? But that was,
I recommend Mr. Branco to become regular member of the ordinance review committee.
still Bronco or Bronco.
He corrected everyone, it's Bronco, so
Bronco?
from now on, Bronco.
Bronco. I will take that as my second.
Yeah,
Maureen
second.
couldn't stand it because the Italian would be Bronco.
Yeah.
But Maureen's not here, so it's Bronco, like he likes it,
Bronco.
Bronco. But it's BRANCO.
I hope you're, yeah.
All right, so we'll vote to approve, Mr. Bronco being elevated from alternate to regular member.
Thank you. Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Brett Foley,
Aye.
Councilmember Bob Hambrick,
Aye.
Councilmember Linnea Bailey,
Aye.
Councilmember Deborah Hines,
Aye.
Councilmember Chris Grummer.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. We'll move on to,
If I may, would you at this time wish to?
I don't have an alternate tonight.
Which means if you want to join the ordinance review committee, we need an alternate. Thanks for indulging me.
All right, next item is to consider and take possible action on the proposed Oakville assistance application from the tree board. Council member Floyd, can you take that one?
Yes, I would move that we approve the proposed Oakville assistance application that the tree board has reviewed and has also approved.
I second.
Seconded by Council member Grummer. Or did you want to speak to it?
Well, let me speak to it very briefly. The application is in your packet. The tree board took a look at it. They approved it, they're fine with it. They did have a few questions they wanted me to pass on to the council. First question is there a maximum reimbursement allowed per household? The permit does speak to, or the application does speak to the idea that no property shall receive more than 1/4 of available funds for a single fiscal year without council approval. I assume that's the max reimbursement, but is that pretty much it in terms of what, I guess the maximum reimbursement that a household could expect? Do we know?
That's all so that the ordinance itself does not limit what you could receive. This suggestion was because some people's properties have a lot and that they might essentially let it get worse to try to get more assistance. So the goal with this was basically, it lets them know that funds are only available till they're available for the year and then they're out. So get your applications in early. And that we're kind of anticipating probably for a year, I would guess, at least. So then they could have equal splits. And then if you get more, it sort of decreases. Right now I have probably about 4 pending, ready to use this whenever we have it going. Whether they follow through, I don't know, because it's kind of an extensive process, but.
Yeah. So the answer to the question would be, according to the application, that no property is going to get more than 1/4 of the available funds.
That's the cap,
Right.
yeah.
Okay. Second question they had was, the Tree City USA application, concerned all trees. And the Oakville abatement application is for oak trees only, and I'm presuming for Oakville. Will homeowners be able to receive compensation for the treatment of trees or replacement of trees beside oaks in order to be consistent with the Tree City USA requirements? And I didn't know the answer to that question.
So the ordinance says that the city can give funds to people experiencing other diseases. It does not obligate us to do that, and it doesn't ask for like a formal application process. Obviously, you probably want to follow this one if anybody's requesting that, because it's just like the basics necessary to determine whether or not there's actually disease there. Why we have this application, what am I referencing? This application in particular is because we do have specifically an oak wilt abatement and assistance thing in our ordinance.
Yes,
Because it calls for the application, you have to have it.
Right, so it doesn't preclude our helping with others, but the priority is Oakville.
Yeah, and our ordinance allows us to help, it doesn't obligate us.
So it doesn't, in your opinion, it wouldn't go against the Tree City USA?
Not at all.
I think their question was, do we want to modify the application to indicate that we can help with other items or issues besides just Oakville, or just for now focus on Oakville?
This form is specifically for Oakville, and
Right.
it is our top priority. I mean, I would be against that, frankly.
I also, given the language of our ordinance, think that an application is presumptive that we will be helping versus the ordinance is essentially like, if you would like assistance, you can seek it, but there's no like guarantee. And we do have other diseases, but Oakville is our primary concern. So I don't want to confuse people or end up, so they also can't use the Oakville funds for other stuff. So like our Oakville funds are for this, that's why this application separate. That other thing is a whole other thing. Satisfies Tree City USA needs, but doesn't need to be incorporated in this.
Okay, so the answer to them is, primarily we're focused on Oakville. There was a possibility that other issues could be dealt with, but that's going to remain the focus of the application for now, right? Correct?
Yeah.
Okay, third question is, what is the recommendation for abatement application decisions and who will make them? My understanding is the tree board is at least to involve that in an advisory basis. So I guess the question I have is does tree board make the final decision, or do they make a recommendation? Do they just review them? What is the process and how are they involved in it, the tree board?
Go ahead.
The application says, applications may go before the tree board for review and are subject to approval. We could clarify that, or we consider striking it. And then essentially funds should be issued if all requirements are met. My concern with everything having to go through the tree board is that pits neighbors against neighbors, and not that our staff isn't neighbors, but it's a little bit different, and there's that clear delineation of like authority there. And so if tree board's saying, oh, you get money or you get money, that gets a little messy. But why we thought it should go to them is if staff has questions.
I read it as may, that's how I read it, is that by having, it may go to the tree board is if staff needed support. The tree board is our expert group, right? So they could tap the tree board and say, I got this problem over on Champions, and would appreciate taking a look, right?
Yeah, and that's kind of the way I saw it as well. I don't think the tree board was like really itching to get in the middle of the process either. So, basically the answer is, if we need their recommendation, their advice, then it can go before them, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I would like to make a motion to edit this and then approve it with that minor amendment. My amendment, so the motion is to say applications may go before the tree board for review and are subject to approval by staff.
By staff, yeah.
So add by staff, and then it's at the bottom of the application. It's like one of the last phrases. It's, sorry, one second.
I can also jump in on one of the things before we.
No, I'm in the middle of a motion, so we gotta
Yeah, hold on.
pause, sorry.
So I can write down where it is.
Page 33,
Okay.
at the very bottom,
Right here.
go to the middle. Second paragraph up.
I was looking, I was looking on the front page and not the back page.
That's what I was looking at.
So, yeah, it's the second little paragraph up from page 33.
It says applications may
Got
go before the tree board.
For review and are subject to approval by staff. You're adding by staff.
Thank you.
And then I'd like to add the phrase, funds will be issued if all requirements are met and funds are available.
If all requirements are met and funds are available.
Okay, so, and do we have a second?
A second?
Seconded by Councilmember Drummer. And so the motion is to amend that line where it's talking about going before the tree board. We don't have to change anything, but it may go before the tree board that stays, subject to approval by staff, and funds will be approved if all conditions are met.
And funds are available.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, and funds are available. I should write this sentence. I can't write as fast. Okay, so any further discussion? Ready to vote? City Secretary?
Councilmember Bob Hendrick,
Aye.
Councilmember Linnea Bailey,
Aye.
Councilmember Deborah Hines,
Aye.
Councilmember Chris Grummer,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Brent Foley.
Right.
Thank you. That's unanimously.
Just have one more comment.
Oh, I'm sorry, Bob.
The
Councilmember Hendrick?
Mr. Pulley was talking about whether or not it has to be an oak tree or another tree. The second thing under the checklist is the size and species of trees. That automatically would imply that it doesn't necessarily have to be an oak tree.
There's more than one species of oak.
Pardon me?
Yeah, it's red,
Oh,
white,
then it should be
and
subspecies then instead of species.
No, they're individual species.
Well, I mean, not everyone's an expert on that, species of tree. So are you saying you want to clarify somehow?
It just implies that we're talking about something other than just oaks.
Do you want a checkbox for the 3 types of oaks that are most acceptable here?
It seems like it would make good sense to do that if we're going to do that.
Species of oak tree.
That way we're being clear that we're talking about oak trees.
Yeah.
No, that's a good point.
Species of oak trees, is that what you're saying, and oak?
Something like that, yeah.
Okay, there are two ways to go about it. One is a, species of oak. The other would be to leave it as is and put additional sub-check boxes, if you will, that say, red oak,
Live oak,
live oak,
white oak.
white oak.
Let me look it up one. Is oak a species? I was under the impression. So yeah, oak is the genus. And then all of those are species. So under the genus oak, there's other oaks. So part of what our ordinance says is essentially red oaks have to be immediately removed. You can't save them, you can't get anything, like just cut them down. So, you can get assistance to replace them, but,
I think we just leave it the way it is. Now that I have that clarified, yeah.
But if you-
what if it said species of, species of oak? We just
If
changed
we
tree to oak.
put in, species of oak would make it much more clear.
Instead of trees.
Uh,
So the amendment is to replace trees with oak.
Mhm.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Motion and a second to replace trees with oak in the second checkbox on the first page. Also, and then I would ask for a typographical change after we finish with this vote.
Okay. You ready to go?
Please.
Councilmember Linnea Bailey,
Aye.
Councilmember Deborah Hines,
Aye.
Councilmember Chris Grummer,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Brent Foley,
Aye.
and Councilmember Bob Hamper.
All right, thank you very much. The typographical, and we don't have to ask for an amendment on this, just to correct it, please, is in the title, Oakville Abatement and Replacement Program. We need an E in there.
Who made that?
So the other thing I'm wondering if we need to vote on, but, this is my fault, because it says not in the oak species, that should technically be genus now, because we just learned something there. Can I change that without the vote?
What do you think?
So a couple bullet points down from when we say species of trees, or we've now voted to change that to species of oak. We've since learned that oak is not the species, it's the genus. So can I flip species and genus without us having some special vote to make it appropriate?
Just as the.
You can just say type of oak tree or something. Genus is gonna confuse folk, I think. I mean,
You guys didn't have biology class?
Well, many people either didn't have it or forgot it.
Yeah.
It's too long ago for me.
Okay, so I guess we could just leave it. It's a little bit wrong, but whatever. Okay.
As long as it gets the word, I mean, we're trying to, I hate to use the term dumb down, but, we've been using it a lot, and that's really what we're trying to do. I mean, it's like, how do we make this easy for the person filling out the application to go, oh, do I have to go to Google and figure out what a species is? If it says species of oak, even if species isn't correct, it says oak, so I think they're gonna get the gist of it and go, right?
Yeah, great.
Okay. All right, so are we done? Item number 9,
Oh, we gotta vote
didn't we
to,
vote on the tree?
we have not voted to approve it. That was the most.
Oh, we need to vote to approve the entire application.
Yes, sir.
All right, so we approved all the amendments, and now we're just voting on the main motion.
I make a motion that we approve the Oakville abatement and replacement program application as we have discussed.
second.
Seconded by Councilmember Pulley.
We've already got a motion on the table. We don't need the second one. That's not double. We've doubled it.
We're gonna do that twice.
You stuck your tip in the bowl after eating it.
That's what I was asking.
Yes, sir.
That we had that on the floor, and I remember all the amendments, but I didn't remember
The main motion.
that we said, okay, pass the entire thing. So, okay, so we'll vote on passing, the application form and getting it into circulation.
Councilmember Deborah Hines,
Aye.
Councilmember Chris Grummer,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Brent Foley,
Aye.
Councilmember Bob Hambrick,
Aye.
Councilmember Linnea Bailey.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, item number 9, discuss and take possible action on the zoning regulations concerning short-term rentals. Councilmember Grimmer.
I have no motion.
No motion on item number 9. So we have item number 10, discuss and take appropriate action on considering a recodification and restructuring of the Wood Creek Code of ordinances. That's Councilmember Hines.
I move that council approve moving forward with a draft, I move council approve moving forward with drafting a proposal for the restructuring of the code in anticipation of a full recodification and authorize the ad hoc work group overseeing chapters 154 plus to begin work on this effort, thus approving the structure as outlined in the agenda packet as the initial starting point for this effort. I will email that to you.
Please.
I second.
I can't read it, but.
So essentially, to break that down is you have a structure in your packet. If you say yes to this motion today, you're saying yes to that draft. It will likely receive many edits before it gets to you again. It's just a starting point. If you say yes to the motion today, you're also allowing that ad hoc work group that's already working on 154 plus to continue their work, which is what started this discussion. And they're adding this to that scope of work. How this came up is, and I can explain that in a minute. So if you vote yes to this, you're also voting yes to the consideration of a full recodification. Is everyone clear on what the yeses mean? And I'll introduce the item if that's all right.
I'm not real clear. If we say yes, then we're saying it's okay to go ahead with the codification. How does that relate to what we have in front of us?
No, it's, you're saying yes to moving towards creating a draft for recodification.
Okay, and
So-
what is this in our package? Is this the old one or?
No.
I can introduce, I don't know if you're understanding what the yes votes mean, was my question, because
I don't
it's a long.
understand, so say it again.
If I could,
Voting yes, the motion, the full motion is that you are agreeing to give the ad hoc work group the authorization to work with the draft that's in your packet, which I'll explain in a minute, moving towards a recodification proposal. Okay, I'm going to introduce the item now, if that's all right. So on page 34 and 35, you see a new outline in your packet. This outline covers every title and chapter we have and is completely adjusted. It's essentially a lot of things are just moved around. They aren't necessarily struck, and several things are essentially renamed. If you move down into page 37, you begin to see what this actually looks like in practice, because that outline can be a little bit overwhelming. So on page 37, you see code outline. That is all of our new titles if we decide to move forward with this draft. So how this came about, editing of 154 plus has highlighted significant errors throughout our code. One of the biggest complaints we have here about our code is that it's too bulky and too difficult to use. It is highly repetitive and whole sections are obsolete and contradictory. The goal is to restructure it to make it more accessible to citizens and more applicable to how Wood Creek actually operates. Some ordinances like variances, Board of Adjustment, planning and zoning, penalties, enforcement, and appeals will be submitted for an update with this recodification. The rest of it would actually just be renumbering of things. There are not a lot of new drafts coming with it. The reason why those things are new drafts, because those were the areas that prompted this idea. Because we have variances listed in several different ordinances. The processes change each time, but that's not even how our city operates. So the goal is to create a variance chapter that outlines anytime you request a variance and remove it out from every single chapter. The reason for that being, when you read all the rules, it's silly to make an exception right at the bottom of all of that. So that's the, that's the messaging we have right now, is rule, 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 and if you don't like it, here's how you get around it. Versus we state our rules, and if somebody has a variance to it, they go to the variance chapter and figure out how to do that. Same with Board of Adjustment. Right now, our Board of Adjustment explains all of this once again. And it's completely different than what's in the chapters, and it references a non-existent chapter. So the goal is to clean up a few things while we restructure. With that being said, chapters 154 plus would be included in the process. We will be hopefully wrapping those up with the ad hoc group. And so that was the other consideration. Do we keep submitting in these micro changes into MSC code, or do we get our little bundle of changes, have the new structure, and have them go together in a packet? The goal and positive outcome of this is that all of our ordinances would be filed in our online computer city database, so that any of us can access them at any point in time via copy. You can't edit them because it's a hard copy or whatever. But right now, for example, we have delays in Unicode. It's really hard to see what is and isn't code in Unicode right now for us, council members. It's also incredibly difficult to say, I want to work on an ordinance and pull it off on these funky little computers and actually work on it. There's a whole problem with that. So by doing it and getting it into our actual city database, any one of us can make a copy of an ordinance and start editing it freely in our existing software and computers. So it eliminates that weird compatibility issue we have, and the issue with seeing things that are delayed in Unicode. Then we can all reference the new ordinance, and we don't have to email each other, hey, what happened with the tree ordinance? I need the newest copy. It's there in the city files, and it's good for our city staff because they have a clear place to reference. Yes, Unicode is still the law, but they have those copies in the database that they can draw up quicker. It was last recodified in 2014. For a long time, no changes were made. Then in 2019, there was a flurry of new ordinances, and in the past year, we have also made significant changes. Often these changes since 2019 have been piecemeal or lacked fluency in organization. My goal with this introduction is to smooth out those edges. We've often touched a thing here without it spider web, which is referenced in all of these other ordinances. So that's the goal, to find all the spider webs, cut the ones we don't need. And the other part of this is definitions. We have definitions in every single chapter. Some of them are pages upon pages. They're at the start of the ordinance. It's very confusing, and the definitions don't even align. And half of them have no business being in the actual ordinance they're in. The proposal creates a general definitions chapter. So we define what our city is, what our city manager is, what the ETJ is, and we define it only one time, once and for all. And then when you open up a chapter, inside that chapter, you see the definitions that are actually pertinent to that chapter. So when you're in the site development chapter, it defines what a concept proposal is. And you don't have to sift through 4 pages of who's a manager, who's the secretary, that kind of stuff. It makes it concise. So this would substantially reduce our code and pages in general, because we're cutting excess, cutting fluff. So if you look at the code outline, the way it's proposed right now is Title I City of Wood Creek. If you look down Title I City of Wood Creek, you can see what's inside that folder, and you see each chapter. And then if you were to click on those chapter folders, you will see the individual ordinances in there. That's where they would be housed. We could even make a subfolder that says old and then current, right? So you can see where we've been in the current. So if you're on page 37, you can see the code outline there, and then you can see the breakdown of what's inside Title I. So if you look at that, you see we define what we are, that we're a type A general law municipality. We define who our governing body is. We define what our code of ordinances does, its general provisions. That's actually in the code. That's your first chapter. That's all it is right now, is that first general provisions, how the code of ordinances works.
I'm sorry. Can we have just a couple minutes? I have to check on my darn.
Take a 5-minute recess.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question or we?
We can't, we have the problem.
Sure, yes. Exactly.
Elizabeth down there.
Maddie?
I honestly don't know.
Okay, I'll bring a couple of certain.
I'm always a sucker.
Oh, he's
because
with it.
Oh, my.
Sarah. Oh, wow, they're cold.
Yeah, they're in the fridge.
I don't know.
I didn't want to pursue that, so just.
Oh, yes,
Easily.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chris?
That's the next.
Who the hell you want that?
Maybe goes at home, clearly.
Yeah.
I get those containers around so I can refill them. Yes.
Good, thank you.
I got you one.
Oh, okay, well.
So you're gonna have.
You tried to resist it, good job.
Yeah.
I already had birthday cake today, so I can't have that.
I'm trying to get rid of them so we could.
Yeah, I'll take that last.
So we stopped eating them.
You can't just live on that.
All of them.
Stick up your tongues when you're done. See how that color.
I guess pink is better than the green or blue.
So you can handle them. So you can handle them.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't say it back to Paula.
Mm-hmm.
They're a little half cookie.
Right. Should Kelly.
I really love that everyone that can watch this video back just watches me.
Someone turns on right now. Just sitting around eating cookies. City council about it?
Yeah, there's a lot of footage of previous council members eating things. My favorite is when we used to have the camera that pivoted, so it would suddenly pivot to person and they'd be like mid-bite.
Mid-bite.
Yeah. Are you okay?
Oh, yeah, thank you. I'm sorry, I mean, Renee.
Okay.
I just had to clarify what I was receiving.
Coming back into session 8:18.
Yeah.
You have a form?
Okay, so I'm gonna wrap up the introduction here in just a second. But what I wanted you to see in your packet is that general outline change. Like I said, most of it is just moving things around. There's some renaming of things. There's some new things being added, like the variance chapter, the definitions chapter. A lot of it was actually just kind of pulling things apart to make them easier to use instead of this giant thing that you open up. It's like subdivided down. Specifically, if you look back at the code outline, so the first code says who our city is. The second code of the first title says who our city is, right? Our governing body, the structure of the city, what our code does. Title 2 is administration. That defines who our staff is. It defines who our advisory bodies are. Then you have our city policies. So that's essentially the things that govern our city, how our city operates. So that's where you see the variances. That's where you see the penalties, enforcement, emergency management, records retention, municipal funds. Then you get into land and water preservation. These are things that talk to the citizens. We have strong land or trees specifically in water preservation code. And so the goal was to draw them out because they're buried in other places. You have to go dig to find them. So they're front and center, the very next thing, first thing citizens see. Next is signs. Signs got their own title because they apply within the city and into the ETJ, and it's a huge document. Then zoning. Zoning is another huge thing that has broad applicability. Then we have our general regulations. These apply to anything the citizens are doing on their own property. Even right now, I'm reading this, I'm thinking maybe that needs to be bumped up. So again, this is just a draft, and it would be essentially just a starting point for the work. Then you have construction that deals with all construction. It's its own chapter. Previously, it was under land usage buried down there, and that was hard for people to find. If they were going to start building on their house or building new houses, they had to dig around for it and know what we were thinking. The previous structure of the code was not written by a Wood Creek resident, knowing how Wood Creek actually operates.
Who's written by?
Alan Borges.
It's actually written by Muni Code. Muni Code is a company that's all they do is draft ordinances. I think codes of ordinances, which are different.
Not
Yeah.
the city of Wood Creek.
Alan Borges. Sorry.
No, wait.
I was just going to say Alan Borges is who signed it.
Okay.
Yeah. So the development and subdivisions are pulled out. Again, they used to be buried under land usage, which, you know, a bunch of us probably know what land usage means. Your average person who is not living in city code day in, day out might not get that. And so that's the goal, is to simplify these terms, make them clear what they are. We're not losing legality in it as much because the organizations of the chapters don't really impact that. The actual ordinances are what actually give us our law. So that's my proposal. Tonight, I'm asking council to authorize the consideration of a recodification, which would basically make any further time spent on this effort valuable because it sends me and this group the message that you would entertain the idea if it got to your desk. You would also be approving that ad hoc group be the first bunch of people to lay eyes on this, right, and comb over it the first time. And you would be approving that this draft is our starting point for the work.
I can ask it. Oh, go ahead, sorry. So when we say this draft, we're looking at basically Title 1 and Title 3 as the initials, or all of the titles?
You're looking at page, the draft of the code is page 34, 35, and 36.
Those are what's already in place, correct?
No, sir, that is
That's the
the
new.
proposal.
Okay.
We considered putting the redlined version in the packet, and it is a gigantic mess to look at. So this is the clean version. This deviates from our existing code. The deviations are not substantial beyond reorganization. There are a couple things added, there are things renamed. Most of it is just a reorganization.
Councilmember Floyd.
Yeah, I appreciate your work on this. I think it's laudable in trying to get this straightened out. But this is a pretty substantial, I think, redo approach to a lot of ordinances. So what my question is when does legal need to get involved in terms of, you know, looking at this and making recommendations? Because I'm a little hesitant to move forward with that until we do have, you know, legal take a look and make sure we're okay. Roger, do you have any comment on that, or?
Codification of ordinances is one of the most complex tasks that a city council can ever tackle, right? This is, by its very nature, the recitation of your laws. And I have encountered through multiple times in the past, the challenge of readability versus completeness. Right. And fortunately, like when codification occurs, staff doesn't handle that. Right. We send that off to the experts and the people that all they do is codification, community code. And, you know, if city council tasks staff with working on this, that would be one of the first places I would go to, would be Unicode, and ask them, why was it set up this way? And why could it not be set up this way, right? The way that you got it. You know, at first glance, I see challenges. I think every problem that you solve kind of might create another one, right? You know, there are sections here that need to be under certain sections. But I applaud the concept of getting better digestible information out to the general public, to the average person, right?
Can you give an example? of
Yeah,
what we actually need to do?
variances. The reason the variances are separated in different chapters is there's different regulations and approaches, whether it's a variance from a zoning ordinance
But you could put that in a variance chapter.
underneath a zoning, so underneath the zoning title.
So you couldn't have a variance chapter that says zoning variances.
I've never seen it that way. And maybe Unicode has better.
What I have seen, because I didn't just come up with this idea on my own, nor did I restructure the code out of my imagination, is that the sky's the limit. Every city has their code organized completely differently. And Unicode cities tend to have pretty standard patterns.
Sure.
Obviously, somebody used a template and started just kind of pre-subscribing the template onto cities. Bulverde, for example, has no titles of anything, and all they have are chapters. And they actually do have some of these divisions of, like, when you're doing variances and things, they have a fee schedule that is its own thing.
Yeah, these guys make sense.
So that's where these ideas came from, was from other existing codes. In reference to Councilmember Floyd's question, I'm not opposed to legal counsel being involved at any time. He costs money, so does staff, and so does Unicode. Unless we have a draft that a group of citizens have looked at, we've looked at, and we actually kind of think, okay, this is a good idea, that would be the point that I think it would be sent off to, can we do this?
And I suppose that my guidance is there are certain topics that require professional review from the outset to avoid wasted time from citizens who may be looking at a code of ordinances for the first time, right? And you know, the comparison I would draw would be looking at the Texas statutes page, you know, the website for the state's laws. That's not easily digestible. It's not something that a normal person can look at and understand and interpret. It takes a long time to find anything, but that's typically what the law, you know, looks like, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a good example of that. I mean, going with the state statutes is like, okay, so if you go through the state code, it's mind-boggling. But if I want to find out what it means, I go to TML. You know, and I you know, it's boiled down. I mean, I would, you know, I think that if we take a look at this as you know, first as a guideline. So we look at it, we workshop it, we get the ad hoc committee, staff and legal to workshop, sort of go through some of the concepts. But yeah, really what I would like to see is almost that TML versions. You know, it's just like what like ordinance review has been doing, what y'all have been working on, is to take it and sort of one sheet it. You know, say here are all the important ordinances that you need to know about and how they impact you. But then you have a brochure or booklet that sort of takes it and boils it down. Because there are two things that are going on here. One is, you know, me, Jeff Citizen, looks at this stuff because I need to fix my deck. You know, so yeah, I'm swamped by this. I need an easy way to figure out what's going on. If I'm not just calling up Suzanne and getting the answers. But if I've got a developer coming in to go through the subdivision stuff, he already knows it. I mean, he, you know, or she, you know, they're well versed on this stuff. They deal with it all the time. They may know more about it than we do. to our disadvantage. So, the stuff has to be, strong enough to protect us, but also easy enough to understand. And I don't know that you could do it in the same document.
I'd like to make a comment. Our ordinances are unusable. They are really very difficult. And what Councilmember Hines is doing enthusiastically is putting them into a usable format. And I think that it should continue to come up with this outline that we can then send to a professional review. But first of all, these need to be usable. And that's what your objective is.
Yeah, no, and that's what I like about it. It's
Yeah.
just like, okay, this is, it follows function, it makes logical sense. And it's, it's a roadmap, to where we need to go. But it's a lot of work. I just don't want a citizens committee to go down, miles of this road, and then it, Peter, you got your hand up, and then we'll.
Well, I was gonna say, I agree with Linnea. I definitely, I think it needs updating, it needs changing. The question is just process. And, I'm completely comfortable in, say, bandaging a cut on my finger. I'm not comfortable in doing brain surgery, for instance. And there are times when, you're beyond the cut on a finger and you're in a situation where, this is a brain surgery kind of thing. This is the heart and soul of our ordinances. So I'm concerned about, just turning loose an ad hoc committee and let them work their brains out on this without, some guidance in terms of the right process, in order to do this without wasting a whole bunch of people's time. It may cost a little money, but if we get it wrong, it's gonna cost a lot more money, in the end, if we make a mistake here, because ultimately these ordinances will be tested by someone. If we get it wrong, then it's gonna cost a lot more money. It's better to spend a little now, get it right. This is clearly a goal of this council. And that's why I guess I would ask the city attorney, again, what process would you recommend in order to accomplish this? Because clearly we all think it's a good idea.
Well, one of the things I think from a clarification standpoint is we're talking about ordinances, right? The little sub-chapter, black small paragraph at the top and the whereases. The prior city council has made the decision to adopt codification. Codification is the process of taking the meat of each of those ordinances and putting them in one location, right? If I'm hearing correctly, and please correct me if I'm getting this wrong, is there a desire to unwind codification and go back to straight ordinances?
No.
Okay.
So as far as procedure, a year ago, we actually talked about this topic with City Manager Brenton Lewis and City Attorney Bud Wymore. And what they said is that periodically recodification is a natural thing that should happen, and that typically a city gets together what they want, and then they have their city manager and attorney and Unicode sit down and have kind of a long meeting, and it's pretty expensive. So what they were sort of alluding to was, you gotta get that packet of what you're wanting prepared to give it to them, because they're gonna work with your final version. They're gonna work from like what you wanna see, and then either put it into action or, come back with edits. And it's kind of a back and forth and an extensive process. Why I'm not jumping straight to asking our lawyer to do everything for us ties back to that point of, I'd like to see our citizens writing our code. And I don't mean they start from scratch. I have never started a code from scratch in my life, and all of the work I've been doing last year. In fact, most of the changes that are in here are not actually anything changing. It's literally just moving chapter 91 and chapter 50 into title, what was it, 3 or 4 together. Yeah, right. And then basically combing through those and changing every reference from 4 to 5. So all the ad hoc committee would actually be doing is combing through, meaning like, oh, you changed it right there, you changed it right there. Oh, you missed changing chapter 90 here. So that's most of what the ad hoc committee is doing, is just that secretarial work. And let me tell you, Karen Duncan is a whiz. If not a little bit difficult to read her handwriting, but she's really good at that stuff. There's a few chapters which would be new to us. None of them are being generated from scratch, meaning the variance chapter is pulling variances, the sections from all those conglomerate chapters and looking at, okay, what if this is just weird procedural changes for no reason? And what, like we're talking about, there's a difference for zoning, or there's a, so we could, and if it gets to the lawyer and the lawyer's like, we don't do variance chapters, all we do is take those little chunks and put them back where they were. Does this make sense?
No,
No.
no, because you're asking the citizens to do all this work and then submit it, find out it's wrong, and then have to put everything back. Why don't we just know whether it's gonna work or not before you make all those changes?
Well, first off, he has not told me anything that actually doesn't work. All he said was, I've never seen it that way, right?
I can give you some examples.
So he could, after tonight, give me a set of examples that he sees in this draft that could potentially be problems. That's it. Again, the draft would just be the starting point. As far as a magnitude of citizens' work, like I said, most of what's being proposed tonight is not actually changing anything. You know what I mean? It's literally just moving the dominoes around and renaming them.
But you
There
are adding in chapters though, right? You said that a minute ago.
I
Well,
added,
yeah, I mean, that part I understand. It's like, we talked before about why were there only odd numbered titles, right? It's just like, there were just some things that didn't make a lot, so you go in there and say, well, what's missing because it's not numbered right? If that's, part of the deal is this sort of cleaning up the mess, then I think I'll be for that. I don't see any problem with that.
the reason why there's maybe odd numbers is so you can add a new title in and you don't have to redo everything. However, there are cities that don't do that. They don't have many gaps. They don't have things. There are cities that don't have titles. There are cities that only work from chapters. There's cities, for example, when you're reading other cities I've seen, that variant section under each thing sends you somewhere else to look. So they don't redo the variances. They don't redo these things. They point you back to this other place. Now, again, the major changes are, for example, an addition of a definitions chapter. We already consulted with the attorney about that. So there's nothing to say that we couldn't have micro consults as we move through and get little recommendations. The main point of tonight is not for you guys to stamp and this is it. It's, do we approve of a recodification, like that, doing that, right? Like, are we okay with reconsidering and doing that? Are we okay with, this is a basic starting outline, understanding that we will seek lawyer input? Are we okay with myself and Councilmember Grummer, who are the people working in it, utilizing that ad hoc work group as the first bounce for input?
Is there something that, for the purpose of assisting everyone, is there a priorities, obviously something is driving these changes, right? A citizen who wants to request a variance doesn't know how to figure it out.
Go ahead.
So what we're finding.
Go ahead.
Wait, interrupted me.
Go ahead.
So what was happening is we've been working on 154 to 157. We got there and it was bizarre and it was a mess, and we realized we're just keep reiterating. And then, oh wow, gosh, they're actually conflicting with each other while we're doing just these 3 chapters. And so it just kind of came to like, how do we make this easier? These are big chapters and that. And we realized, well, if we just quit, if we have the definitions, that's where the little kernel started. Well, if we have the same definitions for all these chapters, why can't we just put them over there in one spot and just point to it?
I might also add that work on 154 to 157, we already spent a lot of money on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, by a professional, and they didn't finish, and it got us 2 years and incomplete work
Right, that's
that
what
we
I'm saying.
can't even use,
That-
because it doesn't work for our city.
Who was the professional?
Kate Freeze.
The engineers were rewriting our
Well,
roads?
No.
city,
No.
city.
Well, it was Brandon was the most recent person who was a city planner. The previous council directed city manager Brenton Lewis to rewrite 154, 157. He sent it to Kate Freeze, somebody on Kate Freeze's staff. I don't know what their qualifications were or not. Again, I'm not supposing I'm qualified beyond a lawyer to do any of this. We are not going to approve anything that a lawyer hasn't looked at. And I am absolutely open to consulting with the lawyer at different phases. For example, after tonight, I might ask Mr. Gordon for his notes so that I can absorb his recommendations, and this draft, because it's just a draft, might shift again before it ever gets to the ad hoc work group. The whole point of this conversation tonight is so that I don't spend 5, 6 hours filling out the rest of these folders for you all, so y'all then find out that you would never consider recodification to start with. So that's the starting point. Are we willing to consider recodification? Are we willing to use this draft as a start point? And are we willing to allow an ad hoc work group, my recommendation is an existing one, be the first bounce for this information?
Man,
Councilmember Bullock first.
I think everyone agrees that there ought to be some recodification. The question is how we go about it. And I've been asking the city attorney, what would be your recommendation, the most efficient process and the most defensible process to get this done?
Yeah, I mean, recomplication is challenging, right? And my understanding is you guys have put in a lot of time on 154 and 156 or 155 and 156.
It goes all the way to 158 now.
Okay. Every layer that you add into this process complicates. things,
We started,
I'd
I
like to
got,
hear him finish.
well, I just wanted to
Please.
clarify what he just said, because we actually haven't spent that much
Yeah,
time.
I've
We
heard
got-
you a lot, and I'm here to see attorney.
We got those chapters from a professional, and I think
These
October,
chapters?
154 plus
Gotcha.
is what we're calling them now. We
Okay.
got them from a professional who had them for 2 years.
Okay.
And we got them in October.
Okay.
We have faced holidays, illness, disaster, and we have come up with, and we're now rounding out a second draft of one, first drafts of others to be submitted. That is the quickest turnaround on these bad boys that, I think we've seen on something this comprehensive. So we're not taking a long time. The work is moving fluidly and smoothly.
I mean, this looks like an incredibly complicated chapter that I would destroy with a red pen.
That is an entire work code outline, not a chapter.
Is it good?
This table of contents, to me, just rearranging stuff, I think it would be more helpful from my perspective. Just handing this to me and saying, give me notes, right? I don't have any idea what the ORC's guiding principles are, right? If the guiding principle is, this is too long of a code of ordinances, that's different from, it's hard for a regular person to read, right? So getting a little bit of guidance on what exactly the expected outcome will be, I think will be helpful for getting me my feedback to you, okay?
Okay, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Okay. 154, 155, 154 plus, those are the 3 most complicated chapters of any code of ordinances, right? And handing those, I think, to an ad hoc committee and them coming back and saying redo everything, to me, that makes I think that seems like an over. There's no reason that y'all couldn't take this step by step.
They did not say that. I am
They do.
presenting that.
They do.
The ad hoc committee did not say that.
Okay.
I am presenting that.
Okay.
Based on a year of attempting to work with our ordinances and make them more
Yeah, so
usable.
I'm not Budweiser, right? I'm not the previous attorney. I don't know what happened with him or didn't happen with him is what it sounds like. What didn't happen, right? If, for example, you guys have changes to 154, 155, 156, and they work, let's replicate those throughout. But starting with a complete recodification, I think is, from where I sit, is challenging.
City Secretary has been having a hand up. I'd like to hear from her, and then I'd like to reiterate something. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm not yay or nay on either side. I just want to let y'all know that Municode has been behind for a while on getting what we've already submitted included. And the last time we had a partial codification was in November, and it only went through ordinance 23.316. And so we still have 5 more that they need to do that are just short documents. So if we could just wait on this until they catch up.
Can you send me what they did in
Nail them
November?
again.
Can you, a PDF?
Yeah,
That'd be great.
it's just so that, because I know like the Parks and Recreation is behind from when y'all put parks into chapter 30. They haven't even done anything yet. So if we give them more stuff,
Right,
I don't want them to.
Well, they're not gonna get this.
so that's part of the problem is right now the code that's being referenced for some citations to citizens is actually not even accurate to what we have passed in the last year. So that's why, again, that database online of actual pass codes would be good, because yeah, Municode shows they've been added, but a resident doesn't necessarily realize that's what that first list is.
Yeah, they don't go under the hammer. They only look on the main.
And right, and so even just this week, we had a discussion where you thought there was certain parking ordinances that weren't there, and you were citing citizens on old code.
Mhm. Almost did.
Because there's not a clear database of what's actually been updated for us to reference.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to reiterate was, I really would like to do 2 things. One is, city attorney, or interim city attorney Gordon, is looking at this at the same time. And as he mentioned, he is not the past city attorney. He is an incredibly well-trained and experienced municipal attorney that knows this stuff inside and out. I would love it if the work group, could workshop this, spend a couple hours in the afternoon, just workshop this after he's had a chance to sort of take a look at this, because this is pretty new to you, is it not?
Yeah, but I didn't even ask before, right? I don't want to come in and start providing notes. I think getting that feedback directly from Councilmember Hines, like sitting down with her even directly would be, I think, valuable.
Yeah, and I'm not against doing this at all. I would like to see the concept of simplifying this based on the bullets that this outline represents. I would like to see that pass, as a guideline, for moving forward. It could change, but approving in context what we're doing here, I think is a good idea. I've liked it from the get-go. I just want to make sure that, everybody's on board, because it does fall on staff, to manage. It falls on council to manage. And it's just like, we just want to make sure that, we've got all of the guidance that we can possibly get to do it right the first time. And that's just my thoughts. So I'm not against this whatsoever. I just want to make sure that we've got all the right players, around the table talking about it.
If I may, it's a slight deviation, but it's something I noticed that could be helpful in this. The way the title is written, and then, so title 2, and then chapters under that start with 2, like 20, 21, 22, et cetera. That only is 10 chapters per title. You can renumber it to be title 2, so a chapter 20, and then 01.0111, and then that gives you a lot more room, because we previously noticed there was a gap between titles to allow room. That renumbering system would allow, put in room again for any future ordinances, for instance, on city policies.
So actually, that's a great, the city policy section is one, I think that it makes sense. Maybe not tonight's not the right time to talk about it, but like municipal funds, I can understand why that's down there, investment policies, records retention, emergency management, those are type of things that I would normally consider to just be under administration. just because they are kind of day-to-day administrative matters. And so, you know, the policy, the word policy obviously can have different meanings depending on how we're talking about it, right? You know, there is clearly a investment policy, right? There's also a way of doing things that each city has. And it sounds like there's interest in clarifying the way the city does things. And I think that's a great approach. I just think this is something, I certainly don't think it's something that should be stopped, right? But I think the question is, what do we do next? Right, and if the ORC is the ORC,
It's not the ORC.
okay, sorry, the ad hoc, okay? If that is the place to continue this discussion next, you know, I'd ask to be part of that next meeting. If it seems like Councilmember Hines is probably a better place to start, because I just think that you probably know more and have spent more time on this than, you know, John Q. Citizen.
The goal, like you said, is to replicate what's going on with chapters we've already updated. And that, you said, you're like, are we, you know, are we gonna work with like what's going on with 154 plus and it works and we like it, so we replicate it, that is it. And to clean up where it's not working. And so I'd like to make an amendment to my motion, and that will hopefully appease Councilmember Pulley's concerns, was that we authorize consultation with our interim city attorney throughout this process.
Sure.
Hours will still be checked with YouTube before just doing it, but that he and I and Councilmember Grummer can sit down and have that initial meeting before maybe this draft even gets to
So the motion is to authorize the,
consultations with,
consultation time with the interim city attorney, on the process. I have a second.
motion to amend, yeah.
I second.
Does that address your concerns in terms of the process?
Yeah, I mean, look, we need to sit down and talk about this, right? I don't want to spend any more time on it than the folks that have been working on it think is necessary. But, you know, I don't want to create the perception that this is a 2-year process from this point forward. You guys have clearly put in the work. So yeah, I would just like to be a part of the next ad hoc committee meeting. I think that'd be helpful.
Well, when they get to this.
How often do they meet?
So we're meeting every Thursday right now, and right now we're still.
Every week?
We've met
Yeah.
once.
Well, that's the goal.
God, I meant for the last 2 years.
No, No, so that group, we just got 154 plus in about October, I believe. We were, or maybe even November, we were basically took it from K-Freeze because K-Freeze hadn't made any significant movement on it. We created an ad hoc work group and we started working on it.
Is there, and I don't want you to take this as a perception that I think an ad hoc work group is not necessary. Do we need 6 or 7 citizens to weigh in on
It's not
this?
that many.
Do we need 4?
It's me and him and
Oh,
two
yeah,
citizens.
okay. That's great. I'm not-
You and.
Karen Duncan, James Miller has asked to join, who's now a new member of the ordinance
And then
review
you guys-
committee. And then the city secretary and city manager attend the meetings.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a good starting point, right?
So let's vote on the amendment. Which is to authorize consultation time.
Yeah.
With the interim city attorney.
11. You don't need to come. He wants to vote. Just
Let's just authorize it. Please.
Okay. Councilmember Deborah Hines,
Hi,
Councilmember Chris Grummer,
All right.
Mayor Pro Tem Brett Foley,
Aye.
Councilmember Bob Pembroke,
Aye.
Councilmember Linnea Bailey.
Aye.
So the amendment passes.
may I answer his question now?
Oh, sure.
I would say you don't need to attend the next meeting unless you're just really eager to see chapter 154 in its second draft, which by all means, and if Mayor would like to approve that, I would like the ad hoc work group to finish those chapters first, which was my goal. And that in the meantime, I'm going to be filling out the rest of the details in here. Because right now we just have the bones and folders. I've not done significant
Yeah,
work.
and I just don't understand why you're handing this off to citizens when you've got an attorney who's been doing this for 20 years.
Nobody's handing anything to anyone. The point is that you are very expensive, no offense. And our city could run up a giant bill that we don't have funds to pay for you to do and like secretarial work of renumbering things.
Well,
That's
sometimes
what-
it takes longer to go and fix something that someone thought they were doing right than it does to just do it right to begin with. You know, that's the problem I see coming behind folks like
We've
that.
authorized,
That's up to.
Yeah, I guess the only question that I would have, and this is happening, we don't need it right now, is if there's anything that's been done with community code, can you just send that to me in advance? Thanks.
So we would just have an initial meeting on the draft is what
I'll
I,
draft this.
yeah,
Yeah, I
just
need,
to
I
get
need
your
to, I need
initial.
to get with you guys to learn more about what you'd like to see happen.
Right, so I'm not recommending we use the current ad hoc work group time for that,
Okay,
is what I'm saying. I would like to let them, us, finish those chapters that we are already assigned, and that any future work on this get in preparation for being introduced to the citizens. So we aren't wasting their time.
all right, so we have approved an amendment that authorizes the time. Could I suggest that the two of you get together with staff, and have that or the five of you get together and have the conversation and sort of plot through the process, and so we're not doing this. I mean, it's like, you've got a plan, you know, and all we're doing is saying, okay, well, let's go ahead and we've got something, I mean, it's like, we've got somebody who's really expert at this, that is going to help the ad hoc committee, you know, with their work and make it all better. You know, so just sit down, get an hour of his time, it's not gonna break the bank. Have the discussion, you know, firm up some plans on how it's gonna go forward, so everybody's on board and understands it, and get it done, and that's all I'm asking. And then if he needs to come to an ad hoc workshop or two, great. If not, great. You know, I don't wanna, you know, I love the guy, don't wanna buy his next house.
No.
You know, so we wanna be careful with this. I mean, we have been very careful about watching our budget, you know, for the past year and a half anyway. We're gonna continue that process. So it's not a blank check. You know, we're just trying to get some work done and play it smart, but avoiding worthwhile investment is not a good idea either. You know, so let's invest in what we have. Arguably one of the best in the business, and he didn't pay me to say that. I'd like to see us move forward with this and just do it in a well-planned, way that we know is gonna work long-term. All right.
Any motion?
Yeah, we have a motion on the floor. Councilmember Pulley had a hand up before. I don't know. Yes.
So I think I forgot, so it's okay.
All right, so let's vote on the main motion,
What is the main motion?
which is
again?
to approve the concept of the recodification,
Right.
With,
you know, based on the,
with the amendment.
Can you want me to read it again? The motion?
will
She
you read the
is
motion?
the original, because it's really long.
Council approved moving forward with drafting a proposal for the restructuring of the code in anticipation of a full recodification, and authorize the ad hoc work group overseeing chapters 154 plus to begin work on this effort, thus approving the structure as outlined in the agenda packet as the initial starting point for this effort.
And you have the amendment hand.
With the amendment to allow for consultation with the city attorney.
You call the roll.
Councilmember Chris Grummer,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Brent Pulley,
Aye.
Councilmember Linnea Bailey,
Aye.
Councilmember Deborah Hines. Thank you.
One more.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Councilmember Bob Andrews. I checked for shit is there.
Aye.
That would have been awkward of you.
Thank you. Thank you. The motion passes unanimously. We move on to number 11, discuss and take possible action to approve verbiage of the Post Citizen Survey.
I did not submit this item. I have no motion.
Mr. Mayor, I think this may be 11 and 12 are basically the same thing.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just like I said, I don't,
Yeah,
so we don't need to pursue a motion or discuss any further on the verbiage. We've already been through that many times. So we move on to number 12, which is to,
Can I ask a question about,
No, there's no motion.
there's no motion?
there's no motion, we're moving on to the next item, which is also related.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can ask him.
There's been
Yeah.
discussion right before motions are made, I think.
These guys.
Well, I mean, we're going to 12, which is on the same topic.
It's
You can ask the
same
question in there. You can ask it now, you can ask it then. It doesn't matter.
Okay, well, I'll ask it with
Okay, so,
12 then.
so it is to approve the final draft, to be mailed and shared as an online survey and set a date for closure survey and final day to submit, which is your item.
I would like to make the motion that council approve the final draft of the 2023 citizen survey exactly as attached in the packet and set a final return and survey closure date, thus directing staff to execute distribution.
I second.
So we, in a previous council meeting, discussed the concept and approved it. There were no edits made to the draft during that time. We also approved how it was going to be distributed, which was online and by paper. This is the final draft showing the online code and all of that. Any submissions that have already been made since this code is posted, I'll be deleting before we get to actually
Oh, the test
releasing it.
submission.
Yeah, whatever's in there will be deleted before we actually release this to the public, because this has been in the packet, so somebody could potentially already be trying to submit stuff. And in fact, somebody accidentally already did submit instead of using the test option, so that's fine. I don't know, but it's good to test it in all ways possible. We can just delete it and say, please resubmit if you were somebody who submitted, but, anyway, so the only part of it that we need to decide tonight is the closure date and get staff input on as to when they could feasibly mail out the paper copies. Because we said we want them to mail it paper. So it's ready to go. It's ready to go in its online format already. Literally, all we need to do is change the date and print.
Okay, my question has to do, I didn't think about it when we looked at it before, but on a question, you have yes, no. So you just find one of them. Well, if a citizen says yes to a question, and then under very important, they say 5, that's gonna be added one way. But what if they say no? Very important.
Then it's very strongly against it.
So in your rating these, your no's would, okay.
And so would it further qualify the yes, no?
Further qualify each level of agreement or disagreement.
Yeah, so the way SurveyMonkey collects it, the way it's entered into the survey is, the first part of that is one question. Should residents blah, blah, blah? They say yes, yes with caveats, no. That's a question. Then the additional comments are a next section where they enter additional comments. Then under that, there's a question that says, how important it is to you that the city take action? And in the online one, it restates it. This one does not, because it's sequential on the paper.
Door to door and
Yeah.
tell.
Well, and it's sequential on the paper, so it's really clear. But when you're looking at the online survey, it's coming up as like a roll. So that's why it needed to be restated, essentially, so that you realize in the online survey which one you're talking about, because visually it's not the same. It's not 4 is all together on the online survey. If that makes sense.
Okay.
So it reconnects it to what you're rating. That rating scale tells us, no, I don't want this, and I want you to do something about it now. Or I don't want it, I don't really care. So it gives council that priority list of like, okay, guys, we need to get an action about XYZ, but we can postpone something else, you know? And then we also get how citizens feel about it. They can also add additional comments, because sometimes there's things we don't think about, of like, oh, you know, we didn't think that that was an option or a concern. Let's add that, like, yeah.
How do you codify the additional comments?
They just print out as a, like, yeah.
Long list. Okay. Okay, that's all.
I have a quick question as well.
we talked last time about, the way this is that each person in a household will get to vote, which is fine. But do we also, is there an ISP audit that can be done? You mentioned that before, that you saw things that came from even out of the county, not within the city of Wood Creek, as far as their ISPs, where that particular survey came from. Are we gonna be able to continue to audit that as well?
I can, I mean, yeah, it's in SurveyMonkey, anybody can see it, with access, you can have access. We can't add access in everybody's computers, because that would charge us, but we can share links for access, or you can come and access it with staff, they could print out that list for you to review, but essentially, I just opened up all the IP addresses, I pinged each one, documented where it was located, and went from there, and then I registered, okay, here's 20 items that are concerning because they are not within a certain radius that is feasible, somebody's working, and I listed that.
Yeah.
And then from there, I broke down, okay, in this, there was 9 items that were concerning because they were the similar answers in far away, or, I talked about it, the only concern we had was about 9 submissions, 3 of which were valid, and the other 6 were possibly somebody just using their phone or iPad on their computer and going, bah, 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 because they what is the word, subsquinch?
Subsequently.
Yeah, that word, Sasquatch. They got shorter in each entry, and they were back to back. So it's like, there are little data points like that you can see, and I can easily do another review like I did. And we assessed the validity of it. Like, did we get enough survey results to believe this is an indicator of the whole population? We assessed the error. So there's a certain amount of error rate that's anticipated in every survey. We like to call it cheating, right? People are cheating, but in the survey world, it's just errors, right? Somebody double tapped, somebody did it when they didn't meet the qualifications for the survey. So every survey has an acceptable error limit. And if you're under that for suspected errors, then your survey is still valid. And it's just a formula calculation.
I do have a question on the IP audit, though. Say, I live here, of course. So what if I go hang out at my friend's house in New Braunfels or San Marcos, and while they're on the phone with their mother, I decide to do my online survey? Is that going to be invalidated?
No, we didn't invalidate any responses. We accepted all of them and were able to validate whether or not the survey was good or not because of those metrics. Because we had less than, it was less than 30 concerning entries total. And that's outside of like what's reasonably Wood Creek citizens. And in that, there was even less that was like, okay, these were probably people messing around. Like somebody called a cousin and had them enter, because you could also see the responses right next to each other. So you could be like, these 2 people entered the exact same responses within seconds of each other with very different IP addresses. That's a little bit concerning. And sometimes it was even the exact same comments. So it was like, clearly somebody shared, but it's like, well, whatever. I mean, it's just a tool, guys, and ladies. It's just a thing council can use to make educated decisions. It's not, it will potentially result in law later, right? But even that's a massive process. Does that make sense? Because somebody's got to draft an ordinance. That ordinance has to pass through P&Z or whoever. So from the survey to the end point is not a short job.
And I would add, when we went through the survey process before, and added the online, and we got the report back, it was very enlightening. And I thought that everybody felt that the results were good. Were appropriate. They might not have liked what they heard, but they were good surveys. This is not, this is science. It's well done, and I think we see the results, discuss as a council what we're reading, what we're seeing, and go from there. What I'm looking forward to is just having some finality to some of the questions that have been bouncing around for years, and give the citizens a chance to speak. We've actually kind of squelched our citizen input over the past several years, and we opened up and we want to hear from them. And by doing this and doing it with some frequency and getting more and more citizen input, I think it just makes us a better city, it makes us a better council, and I'm really glad to see us do this.
Another question, you're going to mail it out and there's going to be online?
That is what council decided last time.
Right, and is there going to be a balance that somebody can't do online and mail in? Or
Just
can
a
we
simple-
assume that there's two people in a household?
Just a simple request and believing in our citizens to be honest and decent.
Okay. And also, one of those surveys, people overwhelmingly said, we want roads and we're working on roads.
Yeah,
It's a good thing.
absolutely.
Can I just make a point? Linnea, I'm so sorry I cut you off abruptly earlier. The reason why I did is because my training on parliamentary procedure tells me if people speak, it can be a second. And so we have to be very careful about if we're not making motions, not speaking in that exact moment. If you have questions between things, that's not necessarily the same, but in that particular moment, we were in kind of a weird gray area of like, we don't want to accidentally approve motions we don't want. Yeah,
Okay,
sorry.
thank you.
It was rude.
Okay, are we prepared to vote on the motion? It's on the floor?
Can I ask a question? Did we set a date?
No.
Not yet.
Right now it says, it closes March 1st. Obviously, that might be a little bit hard turnaround for staff. What would we like it to say?
I have volunteers, I lined up in this first period in December, and they said, just call me when they figure it out. And so if you give me this week to coordinate them, I can possibly get them in next week.
So the citizens would need at least 2 weeks.
Okay. So, and it takes, if I get them out by
No.
Tuesday, then the mail would take 3 days. So it would be next Monday before they get them in the mail.
What about March 8th?
Oh, I was gonna say March 15th.
I almost did too, but
What
isn't
works
that
for you,
like,
Suzanne? What day would be best?
They say,
I think a month from now would be okay. That should give citizens,
2 weeks.
2
to then
weeks,
respond.
and then if they mail them back or if they drop them off, that should give them a week.
It just has to be postmarked. though.
Yeah. Yeah,
Also, on the very last line, the results will not be shared at the March regular meeting.
right, I'll correct everywhere where it says, like, I'll make the timeline follow what it does now, but with the new date. So what was your new date?
so if you closed it, if everything's postmarked by the 8th, and then whatever I receive, I guess the rest of that week, then you can start tabulating on the 13th. Maybe.
I mean, you should probably be entering as you receive instead of waiting to hold it all one day.
Well, if they mail it on the 8th, then I want to get them a chance to hear the input.
Oh, yeah, no, we don't stop accepting anything that's been turned in. I think
Okay.
Marie, like, we even had one that came in 2 days later one time. We still put it in because we weren't done with like processing of results.
So are we okay with March 8th?
I'm fine, I'm just, yeah, whatever they want.
Okay, March 8th.
Mr. Mayor, it is March 8th, unless there's a special meeting, those results wouldn't be published, I guess, till the next meeting, which would be April 12th.
Yeah, that's what I was
Just so
saying.
everybody understands that.
Right,
The
and that,
March 8th, if I understand what, maybe I'm clarifying, the March 8th is the date we're asking the citizens to
Yes.
return the survey by.
Correct.
Okay.
So the results of the survey would be on the April 12th city council meeting, is when you can expect those results.
Unless you had a special meeting.
And we could tabulate all the results by then.
okay.
We can move it up to March 1st if that makes you uncomfortable, but that's cutting it close.
No, March 8th.
Okay.
That would be the date of public hearing.
That's all right. This is just a deadline to mail something.
Yeah.
It doesn't impact our meeting at all.
I would like to make the amendment that we set the date for March 8th.
I second.
Seconded by Councilmember Primmer, and if you will, include adjusting the response dates accordingly. All right, so we have a motion on the floor to set the completion date to March 8th. Good on that?
Okay.
I missed just raising. I missed,
Mayor Pro Tem Brent Foley,
Aye.
Councilmember Bob Hambrick,
You're gonna start with me every time.
Councilmember Linnea Bailey,
Aye.
Councilmember Deborah Hines,
Aye.
Councilmember Chris Grumman.
Aye.
All right, thank you very much. This is unanimous.
Yeah, real quick, next, outside that, on agenda item 9 that we skipped, did y'all want to set a date for a public hearing on potential, changes to the STR regulations? I think we're gonna get a public notice out, and we're gonna try to piggyback multiple notices in one mailing to save money. And I think we just needed to get guidance from whether the regular meeting in March was a good date, or if you guys wanted to push that back.
So P&Z is gonna do their public hearing March 1st.
Yep.
So if we wanted to have a public hearing on these items, then March 8th would fall.
You can have a public hearing anytime you want. It's just the regulations don't go into effect until after that public hearing is taken.
Okay.
Personally, I think it sends the wrong message to our citizens to hold a public hearing before we have an ordinance that's never even been to council. And I think that holding a public hearing prematurely is dangerous, in that it would mislead citizens to believe that we are ready to pass an ordinance or ready to make a decision. I also am a little bit concerned with the procedure of why P&Z is pushing this item to the public before it goes to council, and why that's being facilitated. I don't necessarily support calling a public hearing until we have an ordinance that's clean and been submitted to council for review, and council's actually ready to move forward on something.
Well, P&Z can call a public hearing on their own. They don't need our permission to do it. What I understand that they want to do is just, they've been talking about this. They want to get public input on the direction they feel like they should go. So, and there haven't been members of the public sitting in the audience doing public comments. I think their goal is just to get some feedback, and tell me if I'm wrong, but it seems like their goal is just like, okay, so we've been talking about this forever. What do you think? So they can move forward and take their next steps.
That's their prerogative, right? I mean, they get to do that regardless of what we think.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and the date can be an April date, or, and so it doesn't have to be piggybacked. You guys can send separate notices if you so desire. If there was a desire to piggyback, now would be a good time to set that date for the city council to have a public hearing.
To
Yeah.
save
If
on
they're not
the.
ready, if the answer is we're not ready to set that date.
Just a financial consideration.
Right.
That's all it was. We're trying to piggyback and just send one notice for the P and Z and for the council, but if that's not council's desire, there's no
Right.
need to do it.
Right.
My question is, has anyone told them that council's got a survey pulling in public input? Has anyone asked about the consideration of a town hall, which is a completely different message to the public? A town hall is same function as a public hearing without the scare that we're about to pass an ordinance.
They've been invited.
And is there not some sort of indication of once one hearing is held, a clock that starts the second hearing to be held? So we're essentially being forced to have an extra meeting and consider an ordinance for passage that we've never even seen. I'm just saying, these procedure things are concerning to me, and I respect P&Z and I respect their leader. I just wonder about why we're suddenly doing some pretty liberal gymnastics in our typical procedures. Because typically an ordinance comes to council, then council says, okay, we are now ready to proceed with the public hearing processes. Well, P&Z, will you please set your hearing date?
P&Z is represented by.
Yeah, P&Z has their own prerogative under the local government code. They are independent of city council, okay? And they, before they make their report and their recommendations to city council, which triggers the council's authority to take action, they have to have a public hearing.
Right, and typically we have basically let stuff go to council. Council says, okay, we looked at this, we're now ready to move
Sure.
to public hearings. And then they ask P and Z to set their hearing. This is the politeness that we've previously, in respect of how the flow of community, because essentially once P and Z has this public hearing, we have what, 15 days? Or what is, no, there is some sort of stipulation of when they have a public hearing, ours has to be within a certain amount of time. Am I just making that up?
I think you might be confusing two different deadlines.
Okay, well, I'll research it again.
And I just wanted to point out, they were advised at their December meeting when they were wanting feedback from the public. I did tell them that a town hall was an option. And
They refused to take that option and they wanted to have the public hearing instead.
right, because they felt that they already got the feedback that they would get from a town hall through the answers that were received on the comprehensive plan, land use meeting. In July.
I just want to let the meeting go by without you all having the opportunity to say yay, nay, or nothing.
What do you want to do? Pass?
There's no reason you can't take this up in the future.
Yeah, I don't hear a motion. Okay. Thanks for bringing this to our attention. Sure. All right, we're adjourned.
Oh,
Two in a row?
the packet. Oh, the printout.
Hopefully many more. This is also my third city council meeting in 24 hours.
Oh, my goodness.
Can I mark this?
Waverly still doesn't really know what they're doing with tree pickup.
Oh, really?
So they're trying to figure out a couple of options right now. Right now, they're kind of relying on a couple of nonprofit groups in the area. Yeah, like Cypress Creek, and they go at it.
Now watch the camera go down.
Okay, good. I didn't see the camera.
But I didn't, I didn't.
I just, yeah, I'm just thinking about what happened 10 years ago.
Yeah, no, I know.
Springs also.
I watched that video now.
Last night.
I usually
Yeah, you know where they live?
Like, oh, we're supposed to.
But y'all also have a lot more.
And then I put a number, and I was just reiterating.
Yes, this is a lot more organized.
Sure.
Fortunately, it's easier. I didn't say it.
Oh, organized? I heard
Who
it.
was that?
understand.
Put that in print. Can I post one now?
Well,
Hey, there's no competition.
I think.
No, it's not about-
Well, I think the only thing is that y'all have to have
Yep.
smaller. Nice.
Oh.
Well, Dripping Springs especially, you have so many locations. Dripping Springs is really, well, it extends to you guys. And that's not even including the parts that are Travis County that are Boston. I actually did not know that statistic until they did.
So
their
then there's
state
two separate.
This
I
past
sent
year,
yours
and
for
the state of the cities in the past have been a little
the
bit
volunteer
like
hour QR.
last year, and then
Anytime
future
you
focus.
spend.
This year, the state of the city was more just like historical, here's how the structure of the city is, so there's a lot more that kind of detail. But yeah, so their registration did
And then that QR code.
that far, and so I think
The QR code is-
they did a really good job because they had
Yeah,
Green
yeah.
Springs Ranch Park, so they were able to do a lot of drop off there, but that actually. So they dropped off stuff
That tree.
from all around the area.
The,
Or how many cubic?
these.
I heard that, somebody told me that.
Oh, it was massive, but because
Yeah,
they're
you can
dropping
get a
like,
car.
they're not even here.
But we were over there looking at that.
Monday, and they put a fence,
Yeah.
and we have So I think they're trying to, they kind of stop because of that. Wow. Yes.
And then
So these meetings and recording?
the library parking lot.
Well, the library.
But when he closed it, it didn't record.
No, leave and meeting, it's still recording.